Germany of Iron and Blood. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 626. Can't win. Very good. Finally killed a British battleship. The first battle line has already killed 2 British battleships. We shouldn't be too far behind them. In that case, everyone's face, it's not very pretty. Lieutenant General Hipper said with a smile. General, we have sunk the North Dakota, and soon we will be able to sink more British battleships, the officer said. He seems to be full of confidence in winning. In fact, every officer and soldier of the German Navy believed that they would win this battle. The defense of the American battleship Nevada is really strong. Our 343mm main gun can't penetrate their turret armor, which is really a pity. Lieutenant General Hipper felt helpless said. Otherwise, that single shot alone would be enough to make the battleship Nevada pay an extremely heavy price. General, the armor of the American Nevada class battleships is very thick, especially the turret armor is more than 400mm thick. It is very difficult to chew off a typical hardbone, said the officer. Lieutenant General Hipper nodded. Ask General Spee when they can arrive. The 380mm main guns of the Mackensen class and Flieger class may be able to knock open the turtles of the Americans' shell. If fighting at a distance of 10,000 meters, the 380mm main gun with 50 times the caliber should be able to armor the turrets of American warships, and there is no big problem, said the officer. At this moment, Lieutenant General Spee is leading the 11 battle cruisers of the German Navy to arrive. Once they arrive, occupation will be even more detrimental to the United Fleet. Although the defense of those battle cruisers is slightly worse than that of battleships, they are still very powerful, and the firepower is very strong, which will make the combined fleet lose this war, and it is very likely that it will be completely wiped out. Aboard the battleship Revenge, the flagship of the British Navy, the faces of Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant Admiral David Beatty were very ugly. With the passage of time, the combined fleet's advantage in the number of capital ships is being lost step by step. This made the two of them feel that victory was getting away from them. General Martin reports that they have lost a battleship. The other battleships have almost been suppressed by the Germans. The situation is very unfavorable to us, Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Admiral John Jellicoe nodded. It seems that we still take it for granted. Otherwise, this battle would not have been fought like this. The Germans are too powerful. Even if we gather all the forces that can be assembled, cannot defeat them. General John Jellicoe's words were full of frustration and despair. This time, they have mobilized all the forces they can muster. If the German Navy cannot be defeated this time, then there will be no chance of defeating the German Navy in the future. Admiral John Jellicoe knew that the British Empire would completely sink because of their failure. Even though they tried their best, they still couldn't stop it. Lieutenant General David Beatty opened his mouth to comfort Admiral John Jellicoe, but he suddenly didn't know how to speak. Because what Admiral John Jellicoe said was true. The current situation is indeed too critical for them. Boom. Boom. There was a violent explosion, and the battle at the end of the battle line became more intense. 5 battleships of the German Navy faced 2 battleships of the German Navy, and the 2 sides were evenly matched. This made the French very ashamed, and at the same time, made John Jellicoe and others very annoyed. If the performance of the French Navy can be better, perhaps the current situation will be different. However, it is obviously useless to say these now. The battleship King Albert of the German Navy scored a hit again. 2 343mm shells hit the battleship Normandy. A shell penetrated the waterline armor on the side of the Normandy. Although the waterline armor of the Normandy battleship is as thick as 300mm, it still cannot withstand the 343mm shells fired by the main gun with a 50 caliber. The more fatal damage came from the boiler room. After a shell penetrated the armor, it exploded directly in the boiler room. The violent explosion destroyed all the boilers in the boiler room. A large amount of high temperature steam leaked out, killing the sailors inside. At the same time, the damage to the boiler room caused the battleship to lose power and slow down more and more. You must know that in naval battles, the explosion of the boiler room caused the second largest loss after the explosion of the ammunition depot. The battleship Normandy was severely damaged in an instant. Damn it, let's leave the Normandy immediately and go to the Flanders to continue commanding the battle. Admiral Lame made a decision immediately. The Flanders was not attacked, so it was even safer. The battleship King Albert of the German Navy seized this opportunity and frantically fired at the battleship Normandy, trying to sink it. Before Admiral Lame had time to return to the battleship Flanders, the battleship Normandy was constantly being hit. After losing speed, this battleship is no different from a dead fish floating on the sea. The battleship King Albert of the German Navy can easily hit him. Boom. 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 Violent explosions continued to ring out on the battleship Normandy, and the battleship's injuries continued to worsen. In the 5 minutes before and after, the battleship Normandy was hit by 8 shells. This is undoubtedly a fatal injury to the battleship Normandy. Soon, the battleship Normandy was severely damaged, and the hull suffered great trauma. The entire battleship has been battered and riddled with holes. Of the 4 main turrets, only one can continue to fire. Everything else was destroyed. Seawater is also pouring into the battleship from the hull. Even the damage control personnel were desperate for such a serious injury. This caused the battleship Normandy to sink into the sea very quickly. The French Navy now has only 4 battleships left. And all the warships on the first battle line of the United Fleet, there are only 12 left. This number is the same as the first battle line of the German Navy. However, in terms of combat effectiveness, it was the first battle line of the Joint Strike, which was completely suppressed. Chapter 627, The Last Straw. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Why is this happening? If the fight continues like this, all our warships will be lost. We can't beat the Germans at all. This decisive battle with the Germans is simply a joke. As soon as he climbed on the battleship Flanders, he saw the sinking of the battleship Normandy, which made Admiral Lame tremble with fear. His back felt a little chilly, and he felt like he was alive after a catastrophe. In Admiral Lame's view, the German Navy is too powerful. This decisive battle should not have gone on in the first place. Because it is impossible to win at all. It is just death in vain. Originally, the German Navy had 10 capital ships, but now, there are only 4 left. When this battle is over, it is estimated that there will be no one left. Admiral Lame wants to withdraw from the battle if he can. Send a telegram to the flagship, and tell General Jellicoe that there is no way to continue this battle. So far, we have suffered heavy losses. If we continue to fight, the entire army will be wiped out. Admiral Lame said. Yes, General. The communications officer immediately went to send a telegram. Although, if you retreat, it means failure. Once they lose, the entire Entente is doomed. However, for the sake of his own life, Admiral Lame obviously didn't care so much. Admiral John Jellicoe and Lieutenant General David Beatty on the battleship Revenge, the flagship of the United Fleet, became even more ugly when they heard the news that the battleship Normandy had been sunk. Idiots. Are the French all idiots? 5 of their battleships beat 2 of the Germans, and they were suppressed by the Germans in turn. Now one has been sunk. Could it be that their battleships are all is it paper? Lieutenant General David Beatty cursed. Admiral Lame was not a brave man. Now, even his flagship has been destroyed. I guess he has no courage to continue fighting. Admiral John Jellicoe said, Your Excellency Commander, Your Excellency Chief of Staff, a telegram from the French Navy. The communications officer reported. Admiral John Jellicoe took a look at the telegram and couldn't help but smile dryly. Sure enough, I guessed correctly. Admiral Lamley no longer wants to fight anymore. The flagship was sunk, and he has already been scared out of his wits. Bastards, they are all cowards. Don't they know that, if we lose this naval battle, then we will be finished. At that time, France will also perish because of it. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. Yes. But Admiral Lame and the others obviously don't care that much anymore. Admiral John Jellicoe seemed a little helpless. The battleship Andre Duilio of the Italian Navy is also in danger now. It was fiercely attacked by the King-class battleships Border Governor and asterisk battleship of the German Navy. Got wet. Many Italian naval soldiers on the battleship were even drenched. General Paul is also fidgeting at the moment. He was afraid that the battleship André Duilio would be hit. After all, those shells are all 380mm shells. Once hit, it would be enough for the battleship André Duilio to drink a pot. General, now on the battle line, the French have sunk 1 battleship, the British have sunk 2, and there are only 12 battleships left. The Germans have not sunk a single battleship, and there are still 12 ships. An officer reported. I know. I already guessed that the Germans are very powerful. However, I didn't expect them to be so powerful. How could we defeat them in this battle? They are clearly here to die, Admiral Paul said. When the entire fleet combined assembled 36 battleships, almost everyone thought that they would definitely be able to defeat the Germans. But now, several teeth have been broken, but there is still no hope of victory. General, what should we do now? The officer asked. If possible, of course we have withdrawn from the battle. No matter what, we have returned to the Kingdom of Italy. We have already lost 4 battleships. In this war, the losses paid are already big enough. Paul said the admiral. Withdraw from the battle? Will the British agree? The officers in the command tower couldn't help but look at each other. Obviously, the British would never agree to their retreat, because in that case, the British would be no match for the Germans. What are they doing? Even if we disagree, we have to retreat. We don't want to die here, Admiral Paul complained. By the way, send a telegram to General Lame and ask him what he means. If the French Navy wants to retreat, then we will go together, Admiral Paul ordered. Yes, General. Admiral Paul and Admiral Lame are very pessimistic about this naval battle. They almost all think that it is impossible for them to win this naval battle. If you continue to fight, you will just pay a higher price. Both wanted to withdraw from the battle, but because the British were so tough, they didn't know what to do. After all, we are still allies now. The British Navy occupies the absolute main force in the combined fleet. Not far from the battlefield, a huge fleet is quickly approaching. They are the battle cruiser formation of the German Navy that circled a big circle. A huge fleet of 11 battle cruisers. General, according to the telegram sent by General Hipper, we will soon be able to intercept a battle line of the British. However, we need to change our course now, otherwise we will not be able to grab the T prefix. The staff officers said. Well, it seems that we are not too late. Although the main fleet has already taken advantage. However, it has not been able to completely defeat the British, French and Italians. If we join in, we will crush the last straw for the camel's back. Defeat them thoroughly. Lieutenant General Spenny smiled. He seemed to have seen how much damage the battle cruiser formation he led would cause the United Fleet after joining the battlefield. It can be said that the German Navy has won this battle. The only uncertainties are probably how many capital ships of Britain, France, and Italy they can sink in naval battles, and how much they will pay. Of course, they naturally hope that the bigger the result, the better, and the smaller the loss, the better. Chapter 628, Abandoned Ship. The battle cruiser formation of the German Navy finally arrived on the battlefield. Although, before they arrived, the main fleet of the German Navy's High Seas Fleet had gradually reversed the situation and gained the upper hand. However, the arrival of the battle cruiser formation will enable the German Navy to win the war faster. All ships are ready. Aim at the British fleet and fire. Lieutenant General Spee gave the order to fire on the flagship Mackensen battle cruiser. At this time, the place where the battle cruiser formation of the German Navy appeared was just in front of the second battle line of the British fleet, and a perfect T was formed in this way. The distance between the two sides is only 12,000 meters. Boom. 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 The 3 triple-mounted 50 caliber 380mm main guns of the battle cruiser Mackensen began to fire violently. 9 shells weighing 1 ton roared and smashed towards the battleship Nevada located at the forefront of the second battle line of the British fleet. The firing of the battle cruiser Mackensen was like sending out a clear signal, and the remaining 10 battle cruisers also started firing. For a while, shells fell around the battleship Nevada like rain. Although, the distance is not close, and it has not been tested. However, 11 battle cruisers and 99 main guns fired at the same target, and the intensive firepower formed was still very terrifying. Not to mention that among the 99 main guns, 54 are 380mm main guns, and there are also 27 343mm main guns and 18 305mm main guns. These main guns are all 50 times the caliber, making these shells extremely armor-piercing. Got. The German battle cruisers are coming. They are right in front of us, and they have seized the T prefix. The British naval officers and soldiers on the battleship Nevada all yelled. Lieutenant General Martin's face turned pale all of a sudden. The arrival of the battle cruiser formation of the German Navy is undoubtedly a desperate news for them. What's more terrible is that the battle cruiser formation of the German Navy also targeted them. Turn. Turn now. Lieutenant General Martin roared. In the event that the enemy fleet seizes the T-head, they will be hit by the intensive firepower of the enemy fleet. The enemy's 11 battle cruisers have extremely powerful firepower, enough to easily send them to the bottom of the sea. Boom. The battleship Nevada shook violently, and a ball of fire erupted from the bow. Lieutenant General Martin was caught off guard and fell to the deck, but he immediately got up and asked loudly about the loss. General, a big hole has been blown out of the front deck, and the cabin below is burning. Damage control has begun to contain the damage. Bastard. Lieutenant General Martin couldn't help cursing. However, before he finished cursing, the battleship Nevada was hit by a shell again. The 11 German battle cruisers concentrated their firepower on him. Under such intensive firepower, it is very normal for the battleship Nevada to be hit continuously. Although, the defense of the battleship Nevada is very strong. However, the German Navy's 380mm main gun with a caliber of 50 times can still cause fatal damage to it. The armor of the Nevada class battleship, except for the turret armor which is as thick as 457mm, the other main armor is only 330mm. In front of the 380mm main gun with 50 times the caliber, these armors are nothing at all, and they can be easily penetrated. Boom. Or 380mm main gun fired from the battle cruiser Prince Frederick severely bombarded the number 1 main turret on the front deck of the battleship Nevada. The 457mm thick armor is indeed very strong, and resisted this shell. However, the shell exploded when it penetrated nearly half of the armor. The violent explosion destroyed the frontal armor of the entire turret. Next time, if another shell hits the turret, even a 305mm shell will probably be able to penetrate it. The battleship Nevada at this moment has already begun to turn. However, in this case, this is not a very good command, because this will make the side of the battleship Nevada face the battle cruiser formation of the German Navy, which will further increase the possibility of him being hit. Moreover, the armor on the side of the battleship is not thick. Once hit, the consequences can be imagined. Or 343mm artillery shell hit the waterline armor on the side of the battleship Nevada. The waterline armor, which was only 330mm thick, was torn apart this time, blasting a big hole. The damage control personnel tried to plug the leak, but failed, so they had to close the watertight compartment. Immediately afterwards, or 305mm shell hit the superstructure of the US Nevada. A big hole was blown in it, and it caused a raging fire. When the battleship Nevada turned around, it was constantly being hit. Whether it is a 380mm artillery shell, or 343mm artillery shell or a 305mm artillery shell, they are constantly leaving wounds on their bodies. Although, the Nevada the battleship has a displacement of up to 30,000 tons, and has thick armor. However, after being hit by such a powerful firepower, he still couldn't hold on. In 3 minutes, the Huada battleship was hit by more than 10 large caliber shells. More than half are 380mm main guns. Almost the entire side was bombed and riddled with holes. Seawater frantically poured into the battleship. The hull has already tilted. Moreover, as more and more water enters, the angle of inclination of the hull becomes larger and larger, and the final result must be capsized on the sea. Under such circumstances, Lieutenant General Martin gave the order to abandon the ship. At the same time, he also took the transportation boat and transferred to the battleship behind to continue commanding the battle. He did not choose the battleship Oklahoma following the battleship Nevada as the new abandoned ship, but the battleship New York further behind as the new abandoned ship. because Lieutenant General Martin knew that after the sinking of the battleship Nevada, the next one to be shot by the battlecruiser formation of the German Navy was the Oklahoma. Under the fierce firepower of the German Navy, the fate of the battleship Oklahoma must be very tragic. Even if it was lucky not to be sunk, at least it would be severely damaged. In this case, he will have to give the order to abandon the ship again and replace his flagship. Chapter 629, Runaway. When the battleship Nevada began to sink, Lieutenant General Speed decisively issued an order to transfer the attack target. The target of the attack was transferred from the battleship Nevada to the battleship Oklahoma. After all, the battleship Nevada has begun to sink, and if it continues to shell, it will be a waste of shells. Each shell of a large caliber heavy artillery is not cheap. Being able to save a little bit is a little bit. Besides, there are still so many enemy battleships that have not been sunk. If there are no shells in the end, it will be bad. 11 battlecruisers began to pour shells on the battleship Oklahoma. Immediately, the battleship Oklahoma realized what kind of situation the battleship Nevada was in just now. The dense large caliber artillery shells, if they fall like raindrops, make the battleship Oklahoma like a small boat shrouded in a storm, which may capsize at any time. Although the battleship Oklahoma and the battleship Nevada are of the same class, the defense is also very strong. However, under such intensive firepower, it is still impossible to survive. Boom. A 380mm artillery shell hit the side of the battleship Oklahoma. The shell just hit the waterline of the battleship. The thick armor cannot withstand 380mm shells. The shell tore through the armor and exploded, leaving a large asterisk at the waterline. Damage control personnel desperately tried to plug the hole, but just as they plugged it, the battleship was hit again. The violent vibration caused the big hole that had just been repaired to crack open again. Seawater was poured into the battleship frantically. Boom. Boom. The shells kept hitting the battleship Oklahoma, causing the battleship to be continuously traumatized. A 343mm artillery shell hit the conning tower of the battleship Oklahoma. Because of the angle, the shell did not penetrate the armor of the conning tower. However, the officers in the command tower were caused stunned alive. This confusion in the command of the battleship. A 305mm artillery shell hit the funnel of the battleship Oklahoma. The tall chimney was blown off at once. The section of the chimney that fell destroyed a lot of the superstructure of the battleship. My God. The Oklahoma was not saved either. Under such heavy firepower from the Germans, he could not have survived. After Lieutenant General Martin climbed aboard the battleship New York, he immediately looked at the Oklahoma battleship tragedy. Indeed, under the intensive firepower of 11 battlecruisers of the German Navy, the battleship Oklahoma absolutely had no possibility of escape. Large caliber artillery shells kept falling around the battleship Oklahoma, and from time to time, shells hit the battleship Oklahoma, causing more and more trauma to the battleship's hull. The deadliest shell was fired by the battleship Friedrich Carroll. A 380mm artillery shell hit the number 4 main turret on the rear deck of the battleship Oklahoma. This is a triple-mounted 356mm main turret, armored for later generations. However, the angle of this shell was very tricky, hitting the place where the gun mount under the turret was connected to the deck. The shell penetrated the armor here, drilled down obliquely, and only after it penetrated the armor of the ammunition depot below did it explode. More than 100 356mm shells in the ammunition depot were all detonated at this moment. Only a loud roar was heard, and the stern of the battleship Oklahoma was shrouded in flames and gunpowder smoke. When the smoke cleared, the stern of the battleship Oklahoma had disappeared, as if it had been gored off by a monster. Seawater frantically poured into the battleship Oklahoma from the stern of the ship. The damage control personnel are powerless to deal with such trauma. They can only watch helplessly as more and more seawater floods into the battleship. Under such circumstances, the captain of the battleship Oklahoma issued an order to retreat. Lieutenant General Martin was non-committal about this. After all, when the battleship is doomed to sink, finding ways to save more people's lives is the most important thing. God, what should we do now? Lieutenant General Martin had lost his mind. The loss of 2 battleships in succession, or the 2 most powerful battleships in the fleet, is undoubtedly an extremely serious blow to the strength of the fleet. What's more terrible is that now there are only 8 battleships left in the fleet, but they have to deal with 11 enemy battleships and 11 battle cruisers. This is obviously impossible for them. At this moment, although the fleet led by Vice Admiral Martin has completed its turn. However, the situation did not improve much. The battle line formed by his fleet was in the pincer attack of the second battle line of the German Navy and the battle cruiser formation. With the German Navy having an absolute advantage, it was only a matter of time before the fleet led by Lieutenant General Martin was completely eliminated. The battle cruiser formation of the German Navy entered the battlefield, destroying the battleship Nevada and the battleship Oklahoma in a very short period of time. This was undoubtedly a great shock to the combined fleet. This undoubtedly means that from now on, the United Fleet is completely at a disadvantage. Damn, how did the German battle cruisers come so fast? Now, there are only 9 battleships left by General Martin, and almost all of them are battleships with poor performance. Among the 11 German battleships and 11 under the siege of 2 battle cruisers, there is no life at all. And here, the Germans have an absolute advantage. The current battle situation is very unfavorable to us. Admiral John Jellicoe said. David? Betty Lieutenant General nodded. Now, they only have 20 capital ships left. However, it had to deal with 34 German battleships. Moreover, in terms of the performance of these capital ships, they have no advantage at all. Under such circumstances, it is almost impossible for them to win. The general, the French and the Italians have sent a telegram. They have withdrawn from the battle line and started to retreat. A staff officer reported, "Oh, what? The French and Italians ran away. Damn, how dare they retreat without our order? This is clearly an escape." Admiral John Jellicoe was furious. The escape of the French and Italians undoubtedly made the entire fleet worse. Chapter 630, Pursue. The French Navy and the Italian Navy fled, which caused the combined fleet to collapse immediately. After losing the 6 battleships of the French and Italian navies, the British Navy was down to 14 battleships. It would be idiotic to use these 14 battleships to deal with the 34 battleships of the German Navy. There will only be one final result, that is, all of their warships were sunk by the German Navy, and none of them could escape. After all, the German Navy still had 11 battle cruisers. Even if the capital ships of the British Navy wanted to escape, they could not escape the pursuit of these battle cruisers. "General, what should we do now?" Lieutenant General David Betty asked in a panic. "What else can we do? The French and Italians have fled. Can our remaining warships be able to fight against the Germans?" Admiral John Jellicoe looked desperate. Originally, they were already at an absolute disadvantage. Now, the French and Italians have fled again, which makes them even less likely to win. It can be predicted that they have already lost this battle, and they have lost a complete defeat, and there is no chance to reverse the situation. And they are very clear about the consequences of losing this naval battle. In this naval battle, the British Empire also had no chance of a comeback. The kingdoms of France and Italy will soon surrender to the Germans after this battle. The reason why they waited until this time was to wait for the result of this naval battle. If the naval battle is won, they still have a chance. At worst, a decent peace can be fought for. It will not be slaughtered by the Germans too much. However, after the failure of this naval battle, it is tantamount to cutting off all hope. They had no choice but to surrender to the Germans. What's more, surrendering earlier and ending the war earlier would be of great benefit to their country. The longer the war drags on, the greater the price they will pay in the war. After the surrender of the kingdoms of France and Italy, the Germans could concentrate their forces against the British Empire. The British Empire has only 2 paths. One is to surrender to Germany. However, the conditions of the Germans will definitely be very harsh. At that time, the British Empire will lose too many benefits, and it will directly become a third-rate small country from a world hegemon. The other one is to fight to the end. But even then, I'm afraid it will not be able to prevent the demise of the British Empire. The powerful German army, with the support of the Navy, will cross the Channel and land on the British mainland. The British mainland will be a scorched earth in the war. It is not known how many people will die in the war. In the end, the British Empire will still cease to exist. Command the fleet to disperse and break through. We have already lost this battle. If we continue to fight, there will only be one result, that is, we will be sunk by the Germans. Rather than letting everyone die here, it is better to break through. There will always be some people who can escape back to the UK. I hope God will bless you all. Let as many people escape as possible. Admiral John Jellicoe sighed. David? Betty Lieutenant General closed his eyes in pain. In order for the British Empire to win, they have tried all means. But unfortunately, it still ended in failure in the end. Such a result was really unacceptable to him. However, facts are facts, and there is no room for Lieutenant General David Beatty not to accept it. May God bless the British Empire. In addition to praying to God, Lieutenant General David Beatty seemed to have no other thoughts. The order to disperse and break through was issued, and the remaining warships of the British Navy began to turn around one after another. At the same time, the speed is constantly improving. In order to be able to escape the possible pursuit of the German Navy, the captains even ordered the forced ventilation of the boiler to increase the speed. Even though the boiler was scrapped, they knew that only in this way could they escape. As for whether the service life of the boiler will be affected by this, no one cares. After all, if you can't escape, you will be sunk in the end. In that case, it doesn't matter at all whether the boiler is intact or not. The remaining 10 or so capital ships of the British Navy began to flee one after another. Those small and medium warships also withdrew with these capital ships. The current Royal Navy has long lost the demeanor of the former maritime overlord. Just like a group of bereaved dogs, the reaction of the British made the German Navy a little overwhelmed. They originally thought that the British Navy would never retreat. After all, this is the last chance for the British Navy. If you miss this opportunity, there will never be another similar opportunity in the future. But I didn't expect that at the last moment, the British would choose to escape. However, this is undoubtedly of great benefit to the German Navy. British warships that escaped were more likely to be sunk. At the same time, the threat to the German Navy is also smaller. At this time, the British still want to escape. Do they think we will let them leave? Order the ships to chase the British. No matter what, we must kill all the British warships as much as possible. Lay Admiral Inatshire ordered. Yes, General. In addition, send a telegram to His Royal Highness, requesting him to send a carrier-based aircraft to launch an attack. Since the British want to escape, let's see if they can escape our carrier-based aircraft. Reinhardt? Admiral Scheer issued new orders. The speed of the warship is only more than 20 knots. However, the speed of the aircraft is as high as hundreds of knots. Under the pursuit of the planes, it is impossible for the British warships to escape. The only thing to worry about is that night is coming. It's only 3 or 4 hours before it gets dark. Once it was dark, the British warships could escape under the cover of night. Therefore, if the German army wants to eliminate all the British warships, it cannot delay the battle until dark. After the order of Admiral Reinhard Scheer was issued, the German Navy immediately launched a pursuit battle. At this time, the role of the battlecruiser formation came to the fore. The speed of a battlecruiser is faster than that of a battleship. Except for one battlecruiser Tiger, the rest of the British are battleships. Under such circumstances, it is almost impossible for the British Navy to escape the pursuit of the German Navy. This decisive battle at sea suddenly turned into a pursuit battle. Now that the German Navy has won, what it has to do now is to expand the results of the battle as much as possible. Chapter 631. The Beast will still fight. Your Excellency, the speed of our battleship is too slow. The maximum speed of the Revenge class battleship is only a little over 23 knots. In this case, it is impossible to escape the pursuit of the Germans. Your Excellency, please go down. The battlecruiser Tiger. Although the battlecruiser Tiger suffered some injuries during the battle, they were all minor injuries. The speed of the battleship was not affected in any way. Only the battlecruiser Tiger, it is possible to escape. Lieutenant General David Beatty persuaded. The speed of the battlecruiser Tiger is as high as 27.5 knots. Such a speed is no slower than that of a cruiser. At the same time, the powerful firepower also ensures its own safety. If you take the battlecruiser Tiger, the possibility of getting rid of the pursuit of the German Navy is undoubtedly much greater. Admiral John Jellicoe shook his head. General Beatty, we lost this battle. Someone must be responsible for this. I will stay and command the fleet to continue fighting. Go to the battlecruiser Tiger, report the course of this battle to His Excellency the Prime Minister and His Excellency the Secretary of the Navy. Your Excellency, the failure this time is not due to us, but because the enemy is too powerful. This is not your responsibility, and you don't have to take all the responsibility on yourself. I believe, Your Excellency the Prime Minister and His Excellency Churchill will definitely understand. Lieutenant General David Beatty persuaded. However, General Jellicoe shook his head. He has made up his mind to take responsibility for the failure of this naval battle. Or rather, he wanted to be buried for the defeat of the Royal Navy. Therefore, he intends to fight to the end. In addition, he didn't want to go back to the UK to see the UK admit defeat, surrender to Germany, or the entire British Isles fell into the flames of war. Lieutenant General David Beatty saw that he could not convince General John Jellicoe, so he had no choice but to stop wasting his efforts. Compared with Admiral John Jellicoe, Lieutenant General David Beatty paid more attention to his own life. Therefore, he chose to board the battlecruiser Tiger in a transportation boat. The battlecruiser Tiger began to increase its speed, increasing its speed to 25 knots, and quickly headed towards the British mainland. Of course, it may depend on God's will whether he can return to the British mainland safely. The remaining warships of the British Navy desperately wanted to escape. The German Navy launched a pursuit of them, trying to keep all the warships of the British Navy. The warships of the German Navy all use a combination of fuel-fired boilers and steam turbines, which makes the warships of the German Navy generally have an advantage in speed. The second battle line led by Lieutenant General Hipper and the battlecruiser formation led by Lieutenant General Spee are still working together to strangle the remaining 8 American battleships led by Lieutenant General Martin. After all these American battleships are eliminated, they will start their pursuit. After all, you have to get rid of the trapped enemies at any time, and then plot other enemies. Only in this way can you be safe. Admiral Reinhard Scheer led the first battle line to pursue the remaining 6 battleships of the British Navy. As for the French and Italians who fled first, no one paid attention to them for the time being. In this naval battle, the weakness of the French and Italians was also vividly displayed. Even if the 4 battleships of the French and the 2 battleships of the Italians escaped, they would not pose any threat to the German Navy. Anyway, this naval battle failed, and neither the French nor Italy would have any illusions about war anymore. This will undoubtedly make them make the final choice. Judging from the current situation, the possibility of France and Italy surrendering will be very high. Boom. 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 Cannonballs exploded around the battleship New York, and jets of water splashed up on the sea surface, just like whales spitting water. The 3 Mackensen-class battlecruisers of the German Navy are besieging it. Among the remaining American battleships on the battlefield, only the New York-CLASS battleships are equipped with 356mm main guns, and the others are equipped with 305mm main guns. Therefore, these 2 New York-CLASS battleships have also received the attention of the German Navy. 3 Mackensen-class battleships besieged the New York battleship, and 3 Derfliner-class battleships besieged the Texas battleship to ensure that these 2 battleships were resolved. The other battleships and battlecruisers launched an attack on the remaining American battleships. Damn it. How could it be like this? Lieutenant General Martin seemed a little unacceptable to the sudden change in the battle situation. Although, the British Navy has gradually been at a disadvantage before. However, after the battlecruiser formation of the German Navy arrived, they were directly powerless to fight back. The powerful United fleet fell apart immediately. This kind of failure came too fast and too suddenly. Boom. 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 The 5 twin-mounted 356mm main guns of the battleship New York are also fighting back frantically. Heavy shells slammed hard at the battlecruiser Mackensen, the flagship of the battlecruiser formation of the German Navy. However, the shells also fell into the sea, and no results were achieved. Boom. Suddenly, the battleship New York shook violently, and Lieutenant General Martin's face suddenly turned pale. Damn, we were hit. Lieutenant General Martin couldn't help cursing. Or 380mm artillery shell fired from the battleship Mackensen of the German Navy hit the side of the battleship New York. Where it hits, it's just above the waterline. The defense of the New York-class battleship is much weaker than that of the Nevada-class battleship. The thickness of the waterline armor is only 305 millimeters. This is like paper in front of the 380 millimeter shells. After the shell tore through the armor, it exploded, directly blasting a big hole in the hull of the battleship New York. However, the only thing to be thankful for is that the big hole is probably located above the waterline, tens of centimeters away from the waterline. If the place where the shell hit was moved down by a few tens of centimeters, it would have caused fatal damage to the battleship New York. During the siege of the German Navy, despite being at a disadvantage, the British Navy still showed an extremely tenacious will to fight. They fought back frantically, like a trapped beast, wanting to pull on the German Navy's warship to back them up, before they were sunk. Chapter 632, Sink with the Ship. The battleship Revenge is accelerating and cannot escape. The speed of the battleship has been increased to 23 knots under the forced ventilation of the boiler. This is already the maximum speed that the current battleship Revenge can run. It's a pity that the battleship Bavaria of the German Navy pursued it closely. Compared with the maximum speed of the battleship Revenge of 23 knots, the maximum speed of the Bavaria-class battleship can reach 24.5 knots. It is undoubtedly a miracle that such a huge battleship can reach this speed. Of course, this is mainly because the boilers and steam turbines equipped on the Bavaria-class battleships are the most advanced boilers and steam turbines in Germany. Otherwise, it would be impossible to reach such a fast speed anyway. Boom. 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 The battleship Bavaria and the battleship Revenge are bombarding each other. The heavy shell, under the action of huge kinetic energy, slammed into the opponent's battleship fiercely. However, when the warship is sailing at high speed, the swing of the hull will be more intense, which will seriously affect the hit rate of the battleship. General, the battleship governor of the frontier has caught up and requested to besiege the battleship Revenge with us. The adjutant reported to Admiral Reinhardt. Yes. Admiral Reinhardt nodded. The French and Italians escaped, leaving the British with only 6 ships to fight on. And the first battle line of the German Navy has 12 battleships, 2 against 1. There is no doubt that there is no problem. Moreover, it may be very difficult for the battleships of the German Navy to catch up with the British battlecruiser Tiger. Therefore, the German Navy will not do those thankless things. They directly gave up chasing the battlecruiser Tiger and instead cooperated with other battleships to besiege the remaining British battleships. After the battleship border governor joined in, the battleship Revenge immediately became dangerous. The 2 huge battleships are equipped with 380mm main guns with 50 times their caliber, which is enough to pose a fatal threat to the battleship Revenge. Damn the Germans, don't you dare to fight us one-on-one. Relying on numerical superiority to besiege us. What kind of hero is this? Admiral John Jellicoe's adjutant cursed angrily. But General Jellicoe said nothing. This is war, not a duel. In war, as long as the enemy can be killed, it is victory. If the enemy can be eliminated at the least cost, it is a complete victory. It was precisely this kind of victory that the German Navy was after. Therefore, they will naturally not be so stupid as to engage in a one-on-one duel with the British Navy, which is something only fools can do. Boom. Or 381mm artillery shell fired by the battleship Revenge hit the battleship Bavaria. The shell directly hit the bow of the battleship Bavaria, blowing a big hole. However, for the huge battleship, this is not a serious injury at all. Long live. The British naval officers and soldiers on the battleship Revenge cheered. When they couldn't escape, they took sinking the enemy's warship as their goal. Therefore, hitting the battleship Bavaria made them so ecstatic. Not to mention that this is the flagship of the German Navy. However, it is a pity that it did not cause much damage to the battleship Bavaria. Bavaria immediately responded with color. Or 380mm artillery shell hit the stern of the battleship Revenge. After the weak deck armor was torn apart, the shells exploded inside the battleship, causing a raging fire, further causing trauma to the battleship. Immediately afterwards, the battleship border governor also hit the battleship Revenge. Or 380mm artillery shell hit the number 3 turret of the battleship Revenge on the stern deck. The turret armor is only 330mm, and it cannot withstand this powerful armor-piercing shell. The shell tore through the armor of the number 3 turret of the battleship Revenge and exploded inside the turret. The violent explosion instantly killed the gunners in the turret, blasting them to pieces. At the same time, the number 3 main turret was also overturned and hit the number 4 main turret, causing the number 4 main turret to lose its ability to rotate. The gun from the battleship Governor of the Frontier immediately caused the battleship Revenge to lose half of its firepower, and only the 2 main turrets on the front deck could continue to fire. "Good job," Admiral Reinhard Scheer exclaimed. After losing half of its firepower, the threat of the battleship Revenge to them has been greatly reduced. Send a telegram to the battleship Governor of the Frontier. We will shorten the engagement distance from 15,000 meters to 8,000 meters. Get rid of the British flagship as soon as possible, Admiral Reinhard Scheer ordered. After the combat distance is shortened, this will significantly increase the hit rate. This is more effective for the German Navy. After all, they were besieging a heavily damaged British battleship with 2 battleships. When the battleship Revenge lost half of its firepower, Admiral John Jellicoe couldn't help but sigh. He knew that the end of the battleship Revenge was coming soon, and the Germans would never let this good opportunity pass. Sure enough, the 2 battleships of the German Navy began to close the battle distance. This means that they want to quickly get rid of the battleship Revenge. As the distance continued to narrow, the hit rates of the German Navy's Bavaria battleship and Border Governor battleship began to increase. Constant shells hit the battleship Revenge, making her wounds worse. When the combat distance was shortened from 15,000 meters to 8,000 meters, the battleship Revenge had already suffered no fewer than 10 380mm shells. Although the battleship Revenge has a displacement of more than 30,000 tons, it can't hold it anymore. Under such circumstances, Admiral John Jellicoe gave the order to abandon the ship. The officers and soldiers on the battleship frantically competed for the lifeboat, trying to escape from the sinking battleship Revenge. Admiral John Jellicoe returned to his cabin and locked the door behind him. No matter how the adjutant knocked on the door, he was unwilling to go out. When the battleship Revenge sank to the bottom of the sea, Admiral John Jellicoe, accompanied by the battleship, sank into the icy Atlantic Ocean. Chapter 633, Fiasco. The sinking of the battleship Revenge was undoubtedly a huge blow to the Royal Navy. Not just because the battleship Revenge is their flagship. At the same time, because the battleship Revenge is the most powerful battleship in active service in the Royal Navy. Now, even the battleship Revenge has been sunk, and the other battleships must also be doomed to be sunk. After the battleships Bavaria and Governor of the Frontier of the German Navy sank the battleship Revenge, they immediately turned to the siege of other British warships. On the battleship New York, Vice Admiral Martin's face was pale. Not only because the battleship Revenge was sunk, Admiral John Jellicoe chose to sink with the ship. It is also because the battleship New York is also in danger under the siege of the German Navy. 3 Mackensen-class battleships, each of which is far more powerful than the New York battleship. 3 ships besieged it, which made it impossible for the battleship New York to survive. In the previous battle, the battleship New York had already suffered 2 380mm shells. It wasn't fatal, because it didn't hit a vital point. But now, as the attacks of the 3 Mackensen-class battleships are becoming more and more fierce, the probability of the New York battleship being hit is also rising. Boom. Or 380mm artillery shell fired from the battleship Friedrich Carroll hit the superstructure of the battleship New York. The entire superstructure was pierced with a large hole, which also caused a fire. The damage control personnel immediately started fighting the fire. They rushed to the fire scene wearing gas masks. Many people were directly devoured by the fire. Before the fire was extinguished, the battleship New York was hit again. Or 380mm artillery shell hit the bow of the battleship New York. In the violent explosion, a piece of the bow was cut off. Fortunately, the injured place was above the waterline. Otherwise, this will cost the battleship New York a heavy price. However, this is only the beginning. The German naval attack continued. Boom. Boom. Cannonballs exploded around the battleship New York continuously, and occasionally the shells directly hit the battleship New York, causing great trauma to the battleship New York. As the number of hits increased, the battleship New York also couldn't hold on. Lieutenant General Martin saw this situation and issued an order for the flagship. It's just that he didn't have the courage of Admiral John Jellicoe. He didn't choose to sink into the bottom of the sea with the battleship, but chose to take a transportation boat and headed for a destroyer. Lieutenant General Martin knew that, if he continued to take the capital ship, he would still be the target of the German Navy's attack. At this time, instead of taking a small and medium-sized warship, there is a chance of escape. After all, the current targets of the German Navy are all on those capital ships. For small and medium-sized warships, I don't care too much. The battleship New York sank within less than 10 minutes, and the sister ship Texas of the same class was also sunk under the siege of 3 Der Flieger class battleships of the German Navy. This time, there were only 6 battleships purchased by the British from the United States. Moreover, almost all of them are under the siege of the German Navy and are at stake, and it is only a matter of time before they are sunk. Lieutenant General Spee ordered 3 Der Flieger class and 3 Mackensen class battleships to pursue the fleeing warships of the British, French and Italian kingdoms. Judging from the current situation, only the British battlecruiser Tiger, as well as the 4 French battleships and the 2 Italian battleships that fled first escaped. The other warships are all under siege by the capital ships of the German Navy. As long as all the battleships of the Allied powers trying to escape are sunk, the German Navy will be able to win a complete victory. Of course, this is undoubtedly a disastrous defeat for the Allies. The battlecruiser Tiger is frantically running for its life. The speed of the battleship has been increased to the extreme. Lieutenant General David Beatty, standing on the deck of the battleship Tiger, the oncoming sea breeze made him gradually calm down. There is no doubt that this time the Royal Navy is completely finished. The loss of the Royal Navy in this naval battle was even greater than in the previous naval battle. More importantly, after the failure of this naval battle, the Royal Navy has completely lost the chance to come back. After all, no country can sell so many battleships to them anymore. General, the Revenge has been sunk, the adjutant reported to Lieutenant General David Beatty. Lieutenant General David Beatty's body became stiff all of a sudden, although he had expected such a result a long time ago. However, the bad news still made him a little unacceptable. "What about Your Excellency, Commander?" Lieutenant General David Beatty asked. "Your Excellency, the commander put himself in the cabin of the battleship Revenge and sank to the bottom of the sea together with the battleship," the adjutant replied. Lieutenant General David Beatty heard the news and closed his eyes in pain. A fiasco. An unprecedented fiasco. This time, the Royal Navy has no chance to come back. Lieutenant General David Beatty said. So many battleships were lost, and so many good sailors were lost. Under such circumstances, the British Navy has lost everything. In this naval battle, they were completely defeated. Not only has the Royal Navy been completely broken, but even the British Empire will have no future. Subsequently, Lieutenant General David Beatty received news that the battleships New York and Texas had been sunk. Another 2 main battleships were sunk. However, Lieutenant General David Beatty has become numb. The only thing that makes Lieutenant General David Beatty rejoice is that the German Navy has not caught up. He may be able to escape aboard the battlecruiser Tiger. Although the Royal Navy is over, the British Empire is about to end. However, he can continue to live. Even if you don't continue to serve, being a commoner is much better than dying at sea. However, Lieutenant General David Beatty's hope must be shattered immediately. Woo. When the shrill siren sounded, Lieutenant General David Beatty's expression changed drastically. "General, the plane. The German plane is coming," the adjutant reported in horror. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 634, Surrender. It goes without saying how powerful the German Navy's aircraft are. The German Navy's planes launched 2 rounds of attacks before, causing the United Fleet to lose 10 battleships, which directly put the United Fleet at a disadvantage before the main confrontation began. Now, those planes are at it again. This undoubtedly posed a fatal threat to the battlecruiser Tiger. The number of aircraft in the sky is not many, only 4 fighters, 8 bombers and 8 torpedo attack aircraft. Admiral Reinhard Scheer asked the aircraft carrier to dispatch carrier-based aircraft to attack the Allied warships that escaped. As for those who cannot escape, the capital ships of the High Seas Fleet will deal with them. Therefore, these carrier-based aircraft are scattered attacks. Tiger battlecruiser, as the most powerful battlecruiser of the Royal Navy. Although it cannot be compared with the powerful battlecruisers of the German Navy, it is also not to be underestimated. It's just that the current battlecruiser Tiger is like meat on a chopping board, allowing the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft to slaughter it. Phew, call out, call out. The squadron leader in charge of directing this operation fired 3 flares with a flare gun. Immediately, these carrier-based aircraft rushed towards the battlecruiser Tiger and launched an attack. 4 fighter jets took the lead in attacking, shooting the deck of the battleship Tiger and the anti-aircraft gun positions with aviation machine guns. The battlecruiser Tiger was equipped with a lot of anti-aircraft machine guns and anti-aircraft guns. If bombers and torpedo attack planes attack rashly, they are very likely to be shot down by the anti-aircraft firepower of the battlecruiser Tiger. At this time, the fighter jets played the role of covering the attacks of bombers and torpedo attack planes. Da. The fighter jet quickly passed the battlecruiser Tiger. The dense bullets of aviation machine guns hit the steel plate of the battleship, shooting sparks one by one. Occasionally, a bullet hit the body of a British naval soldier, making that frightening puff sound. There were screams one after another, and many British naval soldiers were torn to pieces. When the anti-aircraft firepower of the battlecruiser Tiger was attracted by the fighter jets, the bombers and torpedo attack aircraft took the opportunity to launch an attack. The 4 bombers dived and dropped bombs from a high altitude. When they were only 800 meters away from the battlecruiser Tiger, they dropped the bombs and changed their dive course. 4 bombs hit the battlecruiser Tiger in a parabola. Evade. Evade. German bombs. The battleship Tiger started an emergency turn to avoid bombs falling from the sky. Of the 4 bombs, 3 fell into the sea, but the other one hit the battlecruiser Tiger. The aerial bomb weighing 250 kilograms has an extremely powerful armor-piercing ability under the action of huge potential energy. The deck armor of the battlecruiser Tiger was torn apart in an instant. The bomb penetrated the deck armor and exploded inside, destroying several compartments. While the bomber was bombing, 4 torpedo attack planes also took the opportunity to attack. They dropped torpedoes only 500 meters away from the battlecruiser Tiger. 4 450mm medium-sized torpedoes quickly rushed towards the battlecruiser Tiger. Torpedo spotted on port side. Urgent evasion. The battlecruiser Tiger once again started an emergency turn. The centrifugal force threw some unprepared naval soldiers on the deck directly into the sea there. However, no one cares about them at this time. To avoid being hit by a torpedo, the battlecruiser Tiger made an emergency turn. However, it will undoubtedly take a certain amount of time for a huge battlecruiser to complete its turn. The 4 torpedoes rushing at high speed would not give them so much time at all. Boom. A violent explosion sounded on the port side of the battlecruiser Tiger. Only 9 inches or 228mm thick waterline armor simply cannot resist the warhead of medium-sized torpedoes. The huge power directly tore the waterline armor, blasting a big hole. Immediately afterwards, another explosion sounded, and the stern of the battlecruiser Tiger was hit by a torpedo. The violent explosion blew up the steering gear of the battlecruiser Tiger. The other 2 torpedoes, although they did not hit the battlecruiser Tiger. However, after being hit by 2 torpedoes, the battlecruiser Tiger has been severely damaged. General, the steering gear has been blown up, and we have lost the ability to turn. An officer reported to Lieutenant General David Betty with a mournful face. Damn it. Lieutenant General David Betty couldn't help cursing. Lost the ability to turn, which means that the battlecruiser Tiger will become a living target, allowing the enemy to attack. At this moment, above the head of the battlecruiser Tiger, there are still many German planes circling. These planes are all carrying bombs and torpedoes. The carrier-based aircraft of the German Navy seized the opportunity of the battlecruiser Tiger being severely damaged, and then launched an attack. After losing the steering ability, the attack of the German Navy's carrier-based aircraft will undoubtedly hit the target more easily. In the new round of attacks, 4 bombers dropped bombs, and 3 of them hit the battlecruiser Tiger. The 4 medium-sized torpedoes launched by the 4 torpedo attack aircraft all hit. Suddenly, several large holes were blown out on the port side of the battlecruiser Tiger. The damage control personnel could only do nothing about this, allowing seawater to pour into the battleship. David, BT Lieutenant General had to order to abandon the ship. Soon, the battlecruiser Tiger capsized on the surface of the sea and sank into the sea. 4 battleships of the French Navy and 2 battleships of the Italian Navy also failed to escape. Admiral Lame and Paul were terrified when dozens of carrier-based planes caught up with them. They witnessed with their own eyes how these planes of the German Navy sank their warships. So, in order to save their own lives, Admiral Lame and Admiral Paul issued an order to surrender. They let the soldiers hoist the white flag, and at the same time they shut down the boilers and stopped the advance. The actions of the French and Italians surprised the pilots of the carrier-based aircraft. However, since the French and Italians chose to surrender, they continued to attack every year, but hovered over the fleet. Fortunately, the fleet led by Lieutenant General Spee arrived, received these surrendered French and Italian battleships. However, it was later discovered that Admiral Lame and Admiral Paul had already fled first on a destroyer. But being able to capture 6 battleships still made the German Navy very satisfied. Chapter 635. Dashing. In the evening, the afterglow of the setting sun sprinkled on the sea, a piece of golden light. Everything looked so beautiful. It's a pity that the smell of gunpowder smoke in the air, the corpses floating on the sea, and the burning and sinking warship completely destroyed this beautiful scenery. Admiral Reinhard Scheer, commander of the High Seas Fleet of the German Navy, Lieutenant General Hipper, Chief of Staff of the High Seas Fleet, and Lieutenant General Spee, commander of the Braking Fleet, all gathered on the battleship Bavaria. All 3 had smiles on their faces. A day of fierce fighting, although it made everyone very tired. However, being able to win this decisive battle at sea made them very happy. From now on, no navy in the world can pose a threat to the German Navy. Your Excellency, Commander, it has been confirmed that all the capital ships of the British were sunk by us. The battlecruiser Tiger was sunk by carrier-based aircraft. Some small and medium warships escaped. Our energy they are all placed on the British capital ships, and those small and medium-sized warships will not be taken care of for a while, Hipper said with a smile. Admiral Reinhard Scheer nodded. It is very good to be able to eliminate all the British capital ships. Those small and medium-sized warships just run away, and it will not affect the overall situation. Your Excellency, Commander, we also captured 4 French battleships and 2 Italian battleships. However, the performance of those battleships is not very good, and they cannot be compared with the battleships of the Imperial Navy. In the previous naval battles among them, this has been proved. Lieutenant General Spee said. The battleships of the French Navy and the Italian Navy are both typical multi-turret battleships, basically with more than 12 main guns. However, the weak armor is flawed. The caliber of the main gun is also relatively small, which cannot be compared with the main gun of the German Navy with a large caliber and a large aspect ratio. The battleships of the French and Italians, take them back home first. After repairing them, put them there. After the war is over, find a buyer to sell them. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Sell it? Although the battleships of the French and Italians are not very good, they can still be used to make do with them. Wouldn't it be a pity to sell them? Lieutenant General Spee said. Not only the captured battleships will be sold, but also many of our own battleships will be sold. Before this naval battle started, Your Excellency the Marshal discussed this issue with me. It is estimated that among the capital ships in active service, except for the King class except for the battleships, Bavaria class battleships, Mackensen class battlecruisers and Derfliner class battlecruisers, the rest of the battleships will be sold. Enter Reinhard Scheer will say. What? Lieutenant Admiral Spee and Lieutenant General Hipper were both stunned. They didn't expect to sell so many battleships. In that case, the German Navy would have only 10 battleships and 6 battlecruisers left. This scale is really too small. Your Excellency, are there only a few battleships left? Are they enough? At that time, we will have vast overseas colonies to protect. There are also Americans on the other side of the ocean who are eyeing us. Without a strong navy, it is impossible to protect our overseas interests and suppress our enemies. Lieutenant General Hipper said. Reducing the number of capital ships does not mean weakening the strength of the navy. Don't forget, the performance of the aircraft carrier in this naval battle is amazing. This is still the case when the Imperial Navy only has 2 aircraft carriers in service. Soon, the 4 aircraft carriers of the first level will be in service. The construction of the next level of aircraft carriers is expected to start soon. Aircraft carriers will replace battleships and battle cruisers and become the real main force of the Imperial Navy. Therefore, as long as the Imperial Navy is in service, there are more and more aircraft carriers, and the strength of the Imperial Navy can still be guaranteed. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Lieutenant General Hipper and Lieutenant General Spee both nodded. They already have a clear understanding of the combat effectiveness of aircraft carriers. If the Imperial Navy can equip more aircraft carriers, then the Imperial Navy is still the most powerful. This will not change. It's just that, compared to battleships and battle cruisers, aircraft carriers are not so powerful and majestic. With so many capital ships missing for a while, Lieutenant General Hipper and Lieutenant General Spee felt really uncomfortable. In addition, according to the information we have received, the British now have many powerful battleships and battle cruisers under construction. The British have fully learned the lessons of the failure of the last naval battle. Most of the rebuilt battleships have strengthened their defenses and their firepower very powerful. However, with the whole of the UK under our blockade, those battleships and battle cruisers basically cannot be completed and put into service. After we defeat the UK, if there is a chance, we can use these unfinished all the warships are captured. At that time, on the basis of these warships, a large number of battleships can be obtained with very little money. This will further expand the strength of the Imperial Navy. Reinhardt, Admiral Scheer said. Lieutenant General Hipper and Lieutenant General Spee suddenly had their eyes lit up. The British are building battleships and battle cruisers, and they know it well. If the British have been busy for a long time, but finally made a wedding dress for Germany, this is undoubtedly a very exciting thing. Your Excellency, Commander, this is undoubtedly a good idea. By then, the strength of the Imperial Navy will still be #1 in the world. Lieutenant General Spee said excitedly. Okay, after calculating the results of the battle, let's report to the country. Your Majesty the Emperor must be waiting for our success report. Admiral Reinhard Scheer said. Yes, Your Excellency Commander. The results of the battle have basically been calculated. I believe that His Majesty the Emperor will be very happy to hear the news of our victory. Lieutenant General Hipper said. General Reinhard Scheer and Lieutenant General Spee silently repeatedly. Indeed, this time, the Imperial Navy once again won a brilliant victory. Thoroughly stabilized the status of the world's hegemony of the Imperial Navy. The Emperor of the Empire must be very happy to hear such good news. When the Imperial Navy received a loud victory report and sent it to Qin Tian, Qin Tian was very happy. The heart that has been hanging around can finally be put back into the stomach. He knew that with this great victory of the Imperial Navy, there was no doubt that the Empire won the final victory of this war. Chapter 636. The overall situation has been decided. Germany, Berlin, Imperial Palace, the office of Imperial Emperor Qin Tian. Tonight, Qin Tian made an exception and didn't have dinner with his family. Instead, he asked the secretary to get some food for dinner, because today is the day of the decisive battle between the Imperial Navy and the Allied Navy. After Qin Tian finished his official duties, he waited in the office for news of the naval battle. Qin Tian has already ordered that, if there is any news about the Navy, report to him immediately. Although, there is no definite news yet, but Qin Tian still believed that the German Navy would definitely win this battle. Although the 3 countries of Britain, France, and Italy have united and assembled a very powerful fleet, however, that was nothing more than a seemingly powerful fleet. In fact, compared with the powerful Imperial Navy, the gap is not a little bit. Not to mention, the Imperial Navy still has 2 aircraft carriers to assist in the battle. The Imperial Navy, which has been replaced with a new type of carrier-based aircraft, is even more powerful, enough to tear apart all enemies. However, there are too many uncertain factors in naval battles. So although Qin Tian was very confident, he didn't dare to really let his mind down until the dust settled. After drinking a cup of coffee, Qin Tian began to think about the future of the empire. This is what he often does when he has free time. After the Imperial Navy finished fighting this war, it had to start to transform. The number of battleships and battle cruisers must be further reduced. Aircraft carriers will replace battleships and battle cruisers as the main force of the Imperial Navy. In addition, once the Empire has received a large number of colonies from the British, maintaining overseas colonies is also an important responsibility of the Imperial Navy. This makes it necessary for the Empire to have a large number of cruisers. Both heavy cruisers and light cruisers are the shortcomings of the German Navy. These are the key developments that the German Navy needs to focus on in the next stage. Destroyers also need further construction. After the German Navy became the number one in the world, in order to fight against the German Navy, other enemies may vigorously develop the underwater fleet in the same way as Germany has taken before. At that time, Germany will have to face a large number of submarine attacks. This requires Germany to have a strong anti-submarine fleet. If necessary, the Navy can build a dedicated anti-submarine frigate, weaken the performance of other aspects, and focus on strengthening the anti-submarine performance. In this case, it will be very effective for the German Navy to deal with underwater threats in the future. Submarines are also a key development arm of the German Navy. Performance of the submarines of the German Navy is still ahead of the world. However, in Qin Tian's eyes, the performance of the current submarine is still too backward. Among other things, the inability to submerge for a long time, and the inability to attack underwater targets is a flaw. Future naval submarines will develop in this direction. When Qin Tian went through all these development plans in his mind, Marshal Earl Tirpitz, Minister of the Imperial Navy, and Marshal von Falkenhayn, Minister of the Imperial Army and Chief of the General Staff, joined hands to see him. Qin Tian guessed the result of the naval battle from the smiles on their faces. This made his heart finally go back to his stomach. "You too, it seems that there is good news for me," Qin Tian said with a smile. "Yes, Your Majesty. It's very good news." Marshal Earl Tirpitz blushed with excitement. "Then I guess our results must be very brilliant. So, what about my loss?" Qin Tian asked. Marshal Earl Tirpitz was taken aback for a moment. He didn't expect Qin Tian to pay attention to the loss issue first, so he said, "Your Majesty, our loss is not big. In terms of capital ships, except for the battle cruiser Blücher, that was lost earlier. In addition, the other battleships did not sink, but some battleships were severely damaged. In terms of small and medium-sized battleships, the losses were not large. It can be said that this time the Imperial Navy won the naval battle." Qin Tian nodded his head. "If the loss is slight, it would undoubtedly be the best. In this way, after the end of this war, the Imperial Navy will have sufficient strength to control the global oceans and ensure that Germany's interests in the world will not be violated. Especially after the defeat of the United Kingdom, the British colonial empire will definitely take over in its entirety. Without a powerful navy, the protection of those colonies would be impossible to talk about. Then, now you can tell me how great our victory is." Qin Tian said, "Your Majesty, during this battle, the Imperial Navy wiped out all the capital ships of the Allied fleet. Among them, 4 French and 2 Italian battleships surrendered to the Imperial Navy. The other capital ships were all killed. The Imperial Navy sank. The 2 fleet admirals of the Imperial Navy sank 12 capital ships of the combined fleet of the Allied powers in this battle. Even the 6 captured battleships were due to the aircraft carriers aircraft. The French and Italians were completely frightened by the Imperial Navy's carrier-based aircraft. When the Imperial Navy's carrier-based aircraft hovered over their heads, they naturally chose to surrender." Turpy Marshal Earl Z said, "Haha, I didn't expect the aircraft carrier and carrier-based aircraft to perform so well in this naval battle. I think there should be no doubts about establishing aircraft carriers and carrier-based aircraft as the future development focus of the Imperial Navy, right?" Qin Tian asked. "Of course, Your Majesty. The entire Imperial Navy supports the development of aircraft carriers and carrier-based aircraft," Marshal Earl Tirpitz said immediately. "Facts have proved that His Majesty's vision is completely correct." Qin Tian nodded and didn't say any more about this question. Regarding the development of the Imperial Navy, he will find time to discuss it with Marshal Earl Tirpitz in detail. "Your Majesty, the Imperial Navy once again won a brilliant victory." The navies of the three countries of the Allies have been completely wiped out by the Imperial Navy. There will no longer be any changes in this battle. Von Falkenhayn said, yes, after the failure of this naval battle, the French and Italians have no other choice. I believe they will surrender soon. As for the British, they may surrender, or they may fight to the end. If they surrender, the Empire must slash the British, so that they have no chance to develop again. If the British choose to resist, then the Empire must prepare to land, and fight on the British mainland. Completely destroy Britain. Qin Tian said. Chapter 637. Bad news. The result of the war is originally that some people are happy and others are sad. The victors, of course, will be cheering, but the losers will undoubtedly be gloomy. What's more, this decisive battle between Germany and the Allied fleet is related to the fate of Britain, France, and Italy. Almost all of these three countries put all their hopes on this war. If they lose, then they will have no other choice in this war. British Admiralty. Churchill locked himself in his office. His secretary had been ordered not to bother him with anything but the outcome of the decisive naval battle. Churchill has exhausted all his thoughts for this decisive battle. In order to allow the British Navy to regain the strength to confront the German Navy, he did not hesitate to go to the United States, and with his 3-inch tongue, he persuaded the US government to sell 12 active battleships to the United Kingdom. Although the UK paid a big price for this, however, he got a chance to challenge the German Navy again, as long as they can seize this opportunity and defeat the German Navy. So, even if it is a big price to pay, it is worth it. For the current British Empire, it wants to continue to exist. In other words, to preserve most of the country's interests, one must win this naval battle. Otherwise, once it fails, the consequences will be disastrous. The British Empire may cease to exist. Even if it is to surrender to the Germans, the price paid may be very harsh. The British Empire will be reduced from a world hegemon to a small third-rate country. This is definitely not acceptable to the British. If the battle is to the end, the powerful Germans can also destroy them. At that time, Britain will still have to be slaughtered by the Germans at will. May God bless the British Empire. We must defeat the Germans in this naval battle. This is our only chance. Churchill secretly prayed to God. Indeed, this is Britain's last chance. If all fails this time, then Britain is completely finished. The combined fleet that is now pieced together is already the last maritime force that Britain can muster. Bang, bang. There was a knock on the door of the office, and Churchill, who was in the midst of chaos, suddenly woke up. Is there any result? I hope God can bless the British Empire. Churchill prayed. Come in. Churchill shouted out the door. The secretary opened the door and walked in. Churchill keenly noticed that the expression on the secretary's face was a little unnatural, which made him feel very bad immediately. He had a very bad feeling that the Royal Navy seemed to have lost again in this decisive battle. Although, he is very unwilling to accept this reality. But he knows that, whether he wants to or not, the reality cannot be changed. Your Excellency, this is a telegram from General Betty. The secretary said. General Betty? Where's General Jellicoe? Churchill frowned, and he felt more and more that something was wrong. General Jellicoe is dead, the secretary whispered. Suddenly, Churchill was speechless, as if struck by lightning. Even General John Jellicoe was killed, which shows what the battle has become. After a while, Churchill said, okay, send me the telegram. You go out. Yes, Your Excellency. The secretary withdrew immediately, as if he was pardoned. He had already read the telegram, so he naturally knew what it was about. He believed that Churchill would be furious after reading the telegram. If he continued to stay here, he might become the target of Churchill's anger. So, it's better to hide as soon as possible. Seeing the secretary run away like a frightened rabbit, Churchill couldn't help shaking his head helplessly. He is now certain that the Royal Navy has failed again this time. Otherwise, the secretary wouldn't be scared like that. Churchill opened the telegram and read it carefully. However, looking at it, his face was already as hen, and his hands were clenched into fists, and they were constantly trembling. It can be seen how angry he is in his heart. Bastard. How did this battle end like this? All the capital ships were lost, but only one German battle cruiser was sunk. Could it be that the German Navy is really invincible? Churchill growled angrily. The secretary who was hiding outside the door couldn't help shrinking his neck. He was very thankful that he ran fast. Otherwise, he would have to bear the wrath of Churchill. The reason why Jellicoe chose to sink with the ship is entirely because he was completely hopeless in his heart. Damn the French and Italians, they escaped. They are all cowards, Churchill yelled. Although, he knew it in his heart. Under such circumstances, even if the French Navy and the Italian Navy do not flee, it is just a lot of trouble for the Germans. In the end, they will still be completely wiped out by the German Navy. But even so, the behavior of the French Navy and the Italian Navy still made him unacceptable. It's over. It's over. The Royal Navy is over, and the British Empire is over. Churchill's eyes were red. Before the outbreak of this naval battle, Churchill imagined that the Royal Navy might also fail this time. However, he never expected that the Royal Navy would lose so badly this time. Of course, some small and medium-sized warships escaped back, but what's the use of that? All capital ships have been wiped out. The loss of the German Navy was very slight. Churchill was almost certain that it would not be long before Germany would launch an attack on the British mainland. Of course, the prerequisite is that Britain does not surrender and chooses to continue to resist. This fiasco is not only bad news for Churchill, but also undoubtedly bad news for the entire British Empire. This indicates that all the efforts of the British Empire have failed. What awaits them is a complete loss of this war. Churchill vented for a while in the office, and the situation calmed down. Prepare the car, I'm going to the Prime Minister's office. Churchill said. Yes, Your Excellency. The secretary hurried to make arrangements. The Royal Navy failed, so the news obviously cannot be concealed, nor can it be concealed. Churchill needs to report this bad news to Prime Minister Asquith. Then, everyone discusses the countermeasures together. Of course, there are very few options left for the British Empire to choose from. Chapter 638. The road ahead is bleak. When Churchill arrived at the Prime Minister's office, Prime Minister Asquith was already waiting in the office. In addition to Prime Minister Asquith, there are Chancellors of the Exchequer, Foreign Secretary, War Secretary, Home Secretary, and Colonial Secretary. After receiving the notice, everyone rushed to the Prime Minister's office immediately. They all know how important this decisive battle between the Royal Navy and the German Navy is, and it is directly related to the life and death of the British Empire. When Churchill walked into the office, all eyes were on him. However, everyone was quickly disappointed. Because they didn't see a smile on Churchill's face, all of them were serious. Although Churchill tried his best to calm himself down, these ministers were all mature figures, and it was easy to see a trace of despair in Churchill's eyes. This undoubtedly made these ministers guess the result of the naval battle. Your Excellency Churchill, have we lost again? War Secretary Richard Haldane asked. Churchill nodded. Got. Have you already abandoned the British Empire? Richard Haldane said painfully. The faces of the other ministers were also full of frustration. Although, they already knew that it would be very difficult for the Royal Navy to win. But in their hearts, there is still a glimmer of hope, hoping that a miracle will happen. Now, reality slapped them hard, letting them know that their previous delusions were nothing but daydreams. Your Excellency Churchill, is a loss big? Prime Minister Asquith asked. He still had a little extravagant hope in his heart. If the loss of the Navy is not large, there may be a chance, Your Excellency. In this battle, all the capital ships of the Royal Navy were sunk by the Germans. The French still have 4 battleships left, and the Italians have 2 battleships left. However, they have all sent to German people surrendered. It was because the French and Italians fled in fear of the enemy at the critical moment that the Royal Navy was quickly defeated by the Germans. Churchill said. Damn the French and Italians, they actually ran away on the battlefield? Prime Minister Asquith was furious, and of course blamed France and Italy for the defeat. Other ministers also cursed France and Italy one after another, as if the French fleet and the Italian fleet did not flee, they would not have been defeated in this battle. Churchill shook his head helplessly when he saw this situation. He knew very well that, even if the French Navy and the Italian Navy did not escape, the Royal Navy would definitely be wiped out. At most, it just lasts a little longer. Now, Prime Minister Asquith and others are just using this to vent their anger. Your Excellency Prime Minister, Ministers, this time the Royal Navy has failed again. I think, from now on, we may not have the strength to challenge the German Navy again. In this battle, the British Empire wants to defeat the Germans. That's almost impossible. So what do we do now? Asked Sir Edward Grey, the Foreign Secretary. Suddenly, the office became very quiet, and even the sound of a needle falling to the ground could be heard clearly. Sir Edward Grey's question is undoubtedly a very headache for everyone. There are only two paths before the UK. However, no matter which way it is, it will not benefit the UK at all. If they had a choice, of course they would not choose either path. But unfortunately, the current situation is already very bad. When the situation is not as good as human beings, they can't help but do what they want. Well, let's talk about it. Now, what should the British Empire do? Prime Minister Asquith said. As the Prime Minister of the British Empire, Asquith was definitely the most powerful person in the world. But now, he would rather he had never been Prime Minister of the British Empire. He was very aggrieved why the world was peaceful and the Empire ruled the world when others were Prime Ministers. When it was his turn to be Prime Minister, it became like this. Although, the British Empire will have its current fate, and he cannot be completely blamed. However, it was during his tenure that the British Empire went from world dominance to war loser after all. In the history books of later generations, the records about him are obviously not going to be much better. This made Prime Minister Asquith very aggrieved, but more helpless. Your Excellency, now, apart from surrendering to the Germans, we have no choice but to fight to the death. As for peace, talks with the Germans, it is almost impossible to reach a decent peace. With the Royal Navy already completely lost, I'm afraid we don't have the capital to negotiate with the Germans anymore. The Germans have already taken advantage. Sir Edward Grey said. If you surrender, the conditions of the Germans will definitely be very harsh. We may have to lose all of our overseas colonies. Even the mainland may not be preserved. The Germans and the Irish have always been in contact. Even they have been secretly supporting them. If we surrender, Ireland will definitely be separated from the British Empire. I'm afraid the situation in Scotland is not optimistic. In addition, the Germans will inevitably extort large sums of war reparations from us. This is almost certain. The Germans have already made this a routine. In order to remove the threat of the empire being Germany, the Germans may impose various restrictions on the empire, so that the empire will never have a chance to stand up. At that time, the empire will inevitably become a small third-rate country, said Sir Edward Grey. When Sir Edward Grey finished speaking, the faces of all the cabinet ministers present turned pale. They were heartily unwilling to accept what Sir Edward Grey might offer the Germans to offer. However, if they surrender, then everything will be impossible to let them go. They are just a piece of meat on the chopping board, to be slaughtered by the Germans. No, we must not surrender to the Germans, and we cannot allow the Germans to slaughter us so wantonly. In that case, it would be better to let the British Empire perish. Churchill gritted his teeth and said, although the Royal Navy suffered a disastrous defeat and all the main forces had been wiped out, this was undoubtedly a great blow to Churchill. However, letting the British Empire surrender to Germany is still not acceptable to him. Chapter 639. Churchill's Determination. Your Excellency, I think that we must now be prepared to fight to the end. If Britain surrenders to the Germans, Britain will be no different from perishing. Only by fighting to the end will there be a slight chance. Churchill looked determined. Fight. To the death. That will turn the entire British Isles into a battlefield. At that time, our land will become scorched earth, our city will be reduced to ruins, and our people will die in the war. In that case, in the end, what is left of the British Empire? Sir Edward Grey shook his head, opposing Churchill's point of view. Your Excellency, I hope that we can resist until the end. We want to fight for the last chance. If we can resist the Germans' attack. In other words, let the Germans suffer heavy losses in the British Isles, so they have to give up using to defeat us by force. In this way, we may be able to pay as little price as possible. This will be very beneficial to the British Empire. Of course, this will also make us pay a greater price. But as long as we can achieve this goal, and all the sacrifices are worthwhile, Churchill said firmly. Prime Minister Asquith nodded. Of course he hopes to achieve a decent peace. In this case, even if he steps down, his face should look better. Can our army hold the mainland? Prime Minister Asquith asked. Your Excellency, the local army has expanded to 2 million people. But we lack weapons and equipment, and the soldiers lack training. Once attacked by the elite German troops, I'm afraid it will be difficult to resist. Minister of War Chad Haldane said. The army has never been the strong point of the British Empire. For a long time, in addition to having the world's #1 navy, the British army has always been very small. Unless there is a major war to be fought, the British army will be temporarily expanded. Under such circumstances, can we still count on how elite the British army is? That is simply impossible. In addition, the most elite unit of the British army is undoubtedly the Expeditionary Force. But it is a pity that the Expeditionary Force has been wiped out in France. This caused the British army to lose millions of troops, and it was still the most elite part of the army. This is undoubtedly a huge blow to the British army. Richard Haldane really didn't have much confidence in wanting to rely on the British army to defend the mainland. Prime Minister Asquith frowned involuntarily. If the army can't defend the homeland, it will be a waste of time to resist to the end, and it will also waste the strength of the British Empire in vain. Your Excellency, the expansion of the army to 2 million people has not reached our limit with the population of the British Empire, and now it is at the critical point of life and death. The army can be expanded to another 2 million people. As for weapons and equipment, it can be assembled step by step. Sufficient soldiers can make us last longer in the war. The Germans are attacking us across the strait, and their logistical supplies will be under great pressure. This also restricts them from sending troops to the British mainland. I predict that the Germans can only send hundreds of thousands of people to land in the UK mainland at most. In this case, our army can completely withstand their attacks. As long as we can resist the Germans' attacks, there is room for change. At that time, we may be able to pay less. Churchill continued. There is no doubt that Churchill intends to use military force to squeeze out the full military potential of the British Empire. This is undoubtedly a desperate move. However, if Churchill can really succeed, then this will definitely be of great benefit to the British Empire. Among other things, at least the mainland of the British Empire can be preserved, as well as the power of the monarch, so that the British Empire does not have to be restricted. As for the overseas colonies, only God knows how many can be kept. Of course, to achieve this goal, one must be prepared to pay a heavy price. It is not known how many British people will die on the battlefield because of this, how many families have been ruined because of this, and how many towns have been reduced to ruins during the war. If we can successfully resist the German attack, that would be a good thing. But if we fail, what should we do? Asked Lloyd George, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Even if it fails, I don't think the situation will be worse than it is now, right? The current situation is already extremely bad. Churchill continued. Everyone looked to Prime Minister Asquith, waiting for him to make the final decision. We have tried our best in this war. However, the final result is still not what we want. If the war ends now, the Germans will definitely not let go of this opportunity to kill us. There is, after learning the lesson from last time, everyone should know how big the appetite of the Germans is. If they surrender to the Germans, the British Empire will only be completely reduced to a third-rate small country. I think everyone must not want to see such a day, yes. However, if we resist to the end, there are also too many risks. The British mainland will be devastated by the war, and the people will suffer heavy casualties. If we win, that is of course good, and we can end the war at a relatively small price. But what if we lose? The British Empire is completely over. Prime Minister Asquith said. Now he is also caught in a dilemma, and he doesn't know what choice to make. Your Excellency, even if we can't hold on at home, we will fight to the end. The British Empire will never admit defeat to the Germans like this, nor will it be destroyed by the Germans like this. If we can't hold on at home, we can also go to the colonies. Go to India or Canada, or Australia. Stay away from the European continent. In this way, we can continue to persist. Although the Germans are very powerful, they still can't cross the ocean to defeat us, can they? Therefore, the British Empire will not be destroyed. Churchill said excitedly. These were all things he had thought about before this. When everyone thought that the British Empire was doomed and had to surrender to the Germans, Churchill had already thought of something more. After hearing Churchill's words, everyone's eyes lit up. The British Empire has vast colonies, and it would be best if they could escape to those colonies. At least, as cabinet ministers, they can continue to hold power and live comfortably. Chapter 640, Prime Minister resigns. The cabinet meeting ended, and Churchill's opinion was passed. Although, everyone still believes that it will be very difficult for Churchill's plan to be realized. However, on the premise that there is no better way, it is a good way to prepare according to Churchill's suggestion. More importantly, everyone still has a glimmer of hope for the future, hoping that their army can withstand the German attack. In that case, it is in the best interest of the British Empire and these ministers. Even if it is bad, they can escape from Britain in advance and go to other colonies. As Churchill said, the British Empire has vast colonies. Even if the British mainland falls, they can flee to the colonies and continue to persist. In that case, even if Germany cannot be defeated, it is still possible to persist until the end. So, after the meeting, Churchill made one more appointment. Although he was Lord of the Admiralty, Prime Minister Asquith appointed him with full responsibility for the defense of the homeland. Even Richard Haldane, Secretary of State for War, seemed to have no objection to this. Everyone left, only the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Lloyd George, stayed. George, the current British Empire has reached its final moment. Although Churchill is still unwilling to give up. But you and I both know that the British Empire has already lost a complete defeat in this war. If you give up the mainland, if you retreat to the colony, even if you can continue to hold on, it doesn't make much sense. Prime Minister Asquith said. Yes, Your Excellency the Prime Minister. However, there is always no harm in letting Churchill try. As he said, no matter how bad it is, it will not be much worse than it is now. No matter how bad it is, we can still go to the colonies. Lloyd George said. Prime Minister Asquith nodded. George, I want to resign as Prime Minister. Prime Minister Asquith's sudden words made Lloyd George's eyes widen. Although Asquith has long since wanted to be Prime Minister, especially when Britain continued to lose on the battlefield, he wanted to resign as Prime Minister. To put it bluntly, I just want to put down the pick and run away, and I don't want to bear the responsibility of losing the battle anymore. Such behavior is undoubtedly despised. However, anyone can understand it if they put themselves in their shoes and think about it. If it were someone else, it is estimated that they would not do better than Prime Minister Asquith, let alone persist for such a long time like him. Prime Minister Asquith is now 63 years old, but he looks older than people of the same age. Although the Prime Minister has great power, he also has great responsibilities and pressure. Especially after the outbreak of this war, Prime Minister Asquith was very busy, and he couldn't even sleep a few times. Under such circumstances, even hard-working people can't hold on. What's more, now that the British Empire is about to fail, this makes him even more reluctant to continue. Your Excellency, the British Empire still needs your leadership. How could you have such an idea? Lloyd George immediately persuaded. If Lloyd George decides for himself, he absolutely disagrees with Asquith's resignation as Prime Minister. There is only one reason, that is, as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, he is regarded as the Deputy Prime Minister of the Cabinet by convention. Once Prime Minister Asquith resigns, he is very likely to step up. If it was at other times, he might be very happy, but now, he is not willing to take over this mess. Although, being Prime Minister has always been Lloyd George's goal. But taking over as Prime Minister under such circumstances is something he is unwilling to do. This was clearly Asquith's desire, to find a hapless guy as a scapegoat. Lloyd George is no fool, of course he won't do it. George, my health is getting worse and worse, and I can no longer perform the duties of Prime Minister. Therefore, I can't continue to do this job anyway. I will go to Buckingham Palace early tomorrow morning, to submit my resignation to His Majesty the King. Prime Minister Asquith said firmly. This time, he made up his mind completely, and wanted to resign. This is the way out, that he has long thought of. After resigning as Prime Minister, the mess can be thrown out. It is even possible to find a way to leave the UK, and go to Canada, or even the United States, thereby avoiding war. Once the German army lands on the British mainland, no one knows whether it will survive the war. After all, in war, human life will be very fragile. Whether it is the Prime Minister or ordinary civilians, they may die. Lloyd George opened his mouth, wanting to persuade him again. However, after seeing Prime Minister Asquith's resolute expression, he knew that it would be futile to persuade him any longer. Prime Minister Asquith had made up his mind. "Your Excellency, who will take over as Prime Minister?" Lloyd George asked. Since Asquith resigned as Prime Minister, it cannot be changed. Then, what he has to do is absolutely not being able to take over as the Prime Minister. Lloyd George also wants to continue to live, and it is best to continue to hold power. But if he is asked to serve as Prime Minister and be responsible for the future destiny of the British Empire, he will never do it. "George, according to the usual practice, you will take over the position of Prime Minister when I have not served the full term." Prime Minister Asquith said. "No, absolutely not. Your Excellency, I'm not capable of leading the British Empire. Especially under such circumstances, I'm simply not capable of leading the British Empire out of the predicament. Therefore, if Your Excellency wants to resign as Prime Minister, I cannot stop it. However, I also have the right to refuse to take over as Prime Minister. If Your Excellency insists, then I will also submit my resignation." Lloyd George jumped up like a cat whose tail was stepped on. Lloyd George's attitude is also very firm. Anyway, he is determined not to take over as Prime Minister. Asquith wants to put down the pick and evade responsibility. He is also not a fool, and he will not be a scapegoat at this time. Prime Minister Asquith's complexion suddenly became a little ugly. If he wants to resign, a successor must be found. Otherwise, His Majesty the King would definitely not accept his resignation. "George, this is your responsibility. As the Deputy Cabinet Minister, after I leave office, you are the best candidate to succeed the Prime Minister." Prime Minister Asquith said. "Your Excellency, Prime Minister, I'm sorry. The position of Prime Minister is too important. My ability is limited, and I cannot take on such responsibilities." Lloyd George refused to budge. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 641, New Prime Minister. Prime Minister Asquith and Lloyd George stared wide-eyed. The attitude of both of them is very firm, unwilling to compromise. This made it impossible to discuss the matter further. Prime Minister Asquith is determined to resign as Prime Minister, unwilling to take responsibility for the sinking of Britain. And Lloyd George is even more unwilling to take the blame. This makes the contradiction impossible to resolve. "Your Excellency, Prime Minister, why don't we find another candidate for the Prime Minister's successor? In this case, you can resign as Prime Minister, and I don't need to succeed as Prime Minister," Lloyd George said. Prime Minister Asquith nodded. This seemed to be the best way. However, other people are certainly not fools. How could they jump out to take over the post of Prime Minister at this time? Isn't that asking for trouble? Other ministers in the cabinet, I'm afraid that no one is willing to take over the post of Prime Minister, Prime Minister Asquith said. It was precisely because of this that he wanted Lloyd George to take over. After all, Lloyd George was Deputy Prime Minister, and it was his duty to take over as Prime Minister. But who knew Lloyd George would be so cunning? Would rather resign than take over as Prime Minister. "Your Excellency, other people may not be willing to take over the position of Prime Minister. But, I think, there is one person who will definitely be eager to become Prime Minister," Lloyd George said. Prime Minister Asquith frowned, but soon, his brows relaxed. He had thought of Lloyd. Who was George talking about? At the same time, he also believes that it is indeed a very good candidate for the Prime Minister's successor. His Excellency Churchill wants to continue to lead the British Empire and continue to fight until the Germans are defeated. Then, if he can become the Prime Minister of the British Empire, then he can implement his plan more easily. I think he will not refuse to be the Prime Minister of the Empire. If this is the case, it is also good for us. If it is impossible, we will leave Britain immediately and go to Canada," Lloyd George said. Prime Minister Asquith nodded. Well, in this case, the possibility of Churchill succeeding as Prime Minister is undoubtedly very high. George, you go back first. I will let Churchill come over immediately and talk to him again. Okay, Your Excellency the Prime Minister. Lloyd George could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. As long as the hot potato of the Prime Ministership is not handed over to him, he will thank God for blessings. Churchill had just returned to the Admiralty when the Prime Minister's office called and asked him to go to the Prime Minister's office immediately. The Prime Minister had important matters to discuss with him. Although, this made Churchill a little confused. But he went to the Prime Minister's palace by car again. When Churchill came to Prime Minister Asquith's office, he found that Asquith was already waiting for him. Your Excellency, is there anything else? Churchill asked. Your Excellency Churchill, I have thought about it for a long time. I personally admire your persistence. Everyone thinks that the British Empire has no chance and has lost confidence. However, you are still willing to continue fighting. This is very rare. I also sincerely hope that you can succeed. Prime Minister Asquith said. Your Excellency, Prime Minister, thank you for your support. I promise, I will do my best to resist the German attack. Churchill said immediately. If he can get the Prime Minister's approval and support, then his plan will undoubtedly be easier to implement. However, Your Excellency Churchill, I believe that there will be a lot of troubles in the future. You are dedicated to the country, but there must be many people who don't understand. Besides, you are the Minister of the Navy. The Navy is fighting with the Germans again. During the naval battle, you suffered an unprecedented fiasco. This made other people even less willing to trust you. In the future, there will definitely be many people who will defy you. Prime Minister Asquith continued. Churchill nodded again and again, although he didn't know what Prime Minister Asquith was saying. However, he had to admit that what Prime Minister Asquith said was embarrassing for him. Your Excellency Churchill, I have decided to fully support you. Prime Minister Asquith continued. Thank you, Prime Minister. Churchill was overjoyed. With the support of Prime Minister Asquith, his pressure will be reduced a lot. I have decided to submit my resignation to His Majesty the King. You are the one who will take over my position as Prime Minister. I think you are the most suitable candidate. Prime Minister Asquith said suddenly. Churchill was stunned immediately. He had never expected such a turning point. Prime Minister Asquith actually wanted to resign and let him take over as Prime Minister. Churchill suddenly felt like being hit by a pie. After all, the position of Prime Minister is a huge temptation for anyone. But then, Churchill knew that there would not be such a good thing in the world. After thinking about it for a while, he knew Prime Minister Asquith's intention. Obviously, Prime Minister Asquith is not optimistic about the upcoming war, so he wants to pick a pick. However, the position of Prime Minister is very important to Churchill. If he can become the Prime Minister, then he can justifiably lead the soldiers and civilians of the British Empire and continue to resist according to his requirements. In this way, no one can disobey his orders, and no one dares to obey his orders. This will be very necessary to resist the German attack in the next war. Your Excellency, this is too surprising to me, Churchill said. Your Excellency Churchill, this is after my careful consideration. Please don't refuse, because you are indeed the best candidate for Prime Minister. Prime Minister Asquith was afraid that Churchill would refuse, so he said hastily. Churchill thought for a while, and finally pretended to be very embarrassed, and accepted the proposal of Prime Minister Asquith. Seeing Churchill nod, Prime Minister Asquith was very happy. Early the next morning, Prime Minister Asquith went to Buckingham Palace to meet King George V. Prime Minister Asquith formally submitted his resignation to George V. King George V was extremely reluctant to stay and hoped that Prime Minister Asquith could withdraw his resignation. However, Prime Minister Asquith's attitude was very firm. Seeing this, George V had no choice but to allow Prime Minister Asquith to resign. Regarding the successor, Asquith recommended Churchill. George V did not nod immediately, because according to the convention, Lloyd George should take over as Prime Minister. However, when other cabinet members supported Churchill's succession as Prime Minister, George V did not insist. In this way, Churchill miraculously became the trusted Prime Minister of the British Empire. Chapter 642, Recalcitrant to the End. Churchill's Prime Minister's inauguration ceremony was very simple. On the day George V approved Asquith's resignation, he moved out of the Prime Minister's office, and Churchill also began to perform the duties of Prime Minister. All members of the cabinet remained in office. In addition to serving as Prime Minister, Churchill also served as Secretary of the Navy. However, Churchill's main energy was on home defense. His first order, after taking office, was to further expand the army, strengthen training and prepare for combat. Build defensive positions in major cities and transportation nodes. On the coast, where the Germans may land, build coastal defense positions, and prepare for the upcoming war. Churchill also tried his best to win the support of the royal family. On the night he took over as Prime Minister, he went to Buckingham Palace to clarify his views to George V. Your Majesty, the current situation is indeed very unfavorable to the British Empire. Although the Royal Navy has tried its best, it was still defeated by the Germans. Therefore, we can no longer prevent the Germans from occupying the entire ocean. The future is foreseeable. The Germans will also launch an attack on the mainland of the British Empire through the sea. Churchill said. King George V nodded, but he was still a little brooding about the Royal Navy's fiasco. After all, the Royal Navy has been the most powerful navy in the world for hundreds of years. In order to ensure this status, the British investment in the Royal Navy has always spared no effort. The purpose is to ensure that the Royal Navy continues to be strong. The British Empire is an island country, and the strength of the Royal Navy is crucial to them. But I didn't expect that even under such circumstances, they still lost in the end. Your Excellency, Prime Minister, I don't understand why the Royal Navy lost, and why did it lose so badly? George V asked. Churchill seemed to have expected that George V would ask this question, and he had already figured out how to answer it. Your Majesty, the reason why the Royal Navy failed was mainly because of a fundamental problem with our shipbuilding thinking. The British Empire has the most colonies in the world, and these colonies are scattered all over the world. Therefore, in order to protect these colonies, we need a large number of warships with high endurance, high speed and firepower. This makes the construction of our capital ships always adhere to this idea. All capital ships pay attention to speed and firepower, and despise speed. The Germans, on the contrary, paid more attention to defense, that is, the survivability of warships in naval battles. This makes their warships very powerful in carrying out strikes in naval battles. It is precisely because of this that their warships can in naval battles. They exerted extremely powerful strength. Our warships would suffer heavy damage after being hit. However, the German warships would only cause minor injuries at most. Under such circumstances, it is natural that we suffer even more. Churchill said. Damn. Why is there such a mistake? Shouldn't there be sufficient arguments when building a warship? George V was very angry. It is precisely because of such mistakes that the future of the British Empire was ruined. Otherwise, the British Empire is still the most powerful country in the world, and it will definitely not be defeated so easily. George V vented his anger before calming down. He also knew that the battle had already been lost, and there was no point in pursuing this issue now. After all, history cannot repeat itself. Even if they now understand why they failed, it is impossible to retrieve those sunk battleships. Another point is that the Germans are far ahead of the British Empire in the use of new technology and new tactics. Their aircraft can already take off from battleships and can drop bombs and torpedoes to attack surface warships. Here in a decisive battle, we lost more than 10 capital ships under the attack of German planes. The reason why the French and Italians surrendered was also frightened by the German planes. It is precisely because of this that's why we lost the naval battle, Churchill went on. It seems that we also need to vigorously develop aircraft. The technological strength of the empire is no worse than that of the Germans. If we hurry up, we should be able to catch up with them. George V said. Yes, Your Majesty. However, that is not the most critical issue. The most critical issue is that we must resist the German attack in the next war. It is foreseeable that if the empire refuses to attack the Germans if they surrender, they will inevitably launch an attack on the mainland of the empire. This also gives us a chance. If we can resist the German attack and let them suffer heavy losses in the war, perhaps they will give up and perish. The British Empire is gone. At that time, the British Empire will pay a very small price to obtain peace. That will be the best result for the British Empire. Churchill said. George V nodded. Your Excellency, I also hope that we can resist the German attack. So, you let it go. I will fully support you. Yes, Your Majesty. Churchill was very satisfied to be able to get the full support of George V in this case. He can mobilize even more power. Your Excellency Prime Minister, can we withstand the German attack? George V was still somewhat worried. Your Majesty, it is undoubtedly very difficult to resist the German attack. However, we also have a great advantage in fighting at home. If God blesses, it is not impossible to resist the German attack. Yes, I guarantee that in the next battle, we will do our best. Churchill said. George V nodded in approval. Your Majesty, we have to prepare for the worst. If the battle fails, I hope Your Majesty can go to Canada. We will try our best to transfer the wealth of the empire there. In this way, we can continue to fight against the Germans in Canada. Even if the mainland falls, we will not compromise with the Germans. I believe that under His Majesty's wise leadership, we will be able to defeat the Germans in the future. Churchill said. If it is impossible, leave England and go to Canada. This is a better choice for George V in that case. At least he is unwilling to be a king of subjugation. This also made George V very satisfied with Churchill's performance and was willing to fully support Churchill's homeland defense plan. Chapter 643, The Helplessness of the French. South of France, Toulouse. It has become a temporary residence of the French government. Before, the French government moved to Bordeaux, but when the warships of the German Navy appeared in the nearby waters, the senior officials of the French government flew out of the woods screaming like frightened birds, and ran directly to Toulouse. Toulouse is also the last big city in the south of France. If it is also threatened, and the French government wants to continue moving south, it may have to cross the Pyrenees and take refuge in Spain. But in that case, would the French government still be the French government? It's almost called a government in exile. Besides, the Spanish government may not dare to accept the French in exile. Seeing that Germany is about to win the World War, to help the French at this time, isn't that a dead end? Toulouse City Hall became the temporary office of the French government. As more and more land fell, more and more troops were dispersed by the Germans. Now France is completely lingering. How long it will last, no one knows. The reason why the French government gritted its teeth and insisted was waiting for the decisive battle between the combined fleet and the German Navy. If the United Fleet wins, then they still have a chance. If the United Fleet fails, then there is no need for them to persevere. French President Poincaré's office and cabinet senior officials gathered here, waiting for the news of the naval battle. Although, after waiting for a day, everyone was very tired. But everyone is still insisting. The most is to smoke an extra cigar and drink an extra cup of espresso. Minister of the Navy, do you have any news? President Poincaré asked. Maybe even he himself can't remember clearly. This is the first time he has asked this question. Your Excellency, there is no news yet. However, it is almost evening now. The battle should end soon. Minister Victor Gagnon said. President Poincaré nodded. So, do we have a chance of winning? Your Excellency, the chances of winning may not be great. Although the three of us have united to form a powerful fleet that is not inferior to the number of battleships of the Germans. However, it is not enough battleships to defeat the Germans. Compared with the German Navy, the performance of our warships and the quality of our naval officers and soldiers are far behind. The most elite group of naval officers and soldiers of the British died almost in the previous naval battles. The current officers and soldiers are worse a lot. Victor Gagnon said. Oh, I hope God can bless the French Republic. President Poincaré was quite helpless. The current French government is indeed very helpless. Their performance in this war was already very bad. On the battlefield, they could no longer withstand the German attack, so they could only retreat blindly, trading space for time. The only thing that can be done is to wait for the outcome of the naval battle. They pinned all their hopes on the naval battle. If the naval battle can be won, then they still have a chance. If the naval battle fails, then defeat and surrender have become inevitable. It can be said that the result of the naval battle is related to the life and death of France, and it is also an important basis for these senior officials of the French government to decide what to do next. Everyone is looking forward to the outcome of this naval battle, but more nervous. They expect the combined fleet to perform miracles and defeat the German Navy. But at the same time, they are also worried that the final result is still failure. Of course, failure is relatively normal. The disparity in strength between the two sides is too great. Pinning your hopes on miracles is simply not realistic. Half an hour later, an admiral walked into the office with a serious expression. Is there a result? President Poincaré asked immediately. Other people also focused their eyes on this general. Report, Your Excellency. The combined fleet was defeated. All capital ships were sunk or captured by the Germans. The losses we caused to the Germans were very slight, the general said. Defeated. Sure enough, is it still defeated? President Poincaré sat back on the chair dejectedly. This result completely shattered the hope in his heart. However, at the same time, President Poincaré was relieved. After knowing the results of this month, at least there is no need to continue to delusional. Other senior French cabinet officials also whispered. However, everyone's faces were full of frustration. Although, the United Fleet was defeated, which is not surprising. However, such a result is still too difficult for people to accept. After all, after the combined fleet was defeated, there was only one way for the French, Your Excellency. It seems that we have been unable to reverse the situation of the war. The combined fleet has failed, and our only hope has been shattered. Prime Minister René Viviani said. President Poincaré nodded. Originally, we pinned our hopes on the combined fleet, hoping that the fleet could perform miracles and defeat the German Navy. However, it now seems that all this is simply delusional. Everyone, the most difficult moment for the French Republic has arrived. What should we do next? President Poincaré looked at the senior cabinet officials. However, these senior officials all lowered their heads and said nothing. What to do now? Isn't it obvious? To say anything else, it has long been useless. Your Excellency, the Navy has failed, and the army has failed to hold back the Germans. The Germans are continuing to push south. There is nothing we can do about it. This war has been going on for a long time. For this reason, it has already paid a high enough price. Since it is impossible to win, then, let's end the war as soon as possible. In this case, we can reduce some losses to some extent. Foreign Minister Théophile Delcasse suggested. Yes, Your Excellency. We have no choice. The army has been defeated by the Germans many times. Now, many units of the army don't even have the courage to fight the Germans. Often when the German artillery fires, we the troops were defeated. If this continues, the Germans will attack Toulouse in a short time. The whole of France will be occupied by the Germans. Minister of War Alexander Millerand said. The elite troops of the French army have long since died. The current troops are all recruits. They don't have much fighting power at all, and they have been frightened by the Germans. Chapter 644. Beggar. No, it is absolutely impossible to ask the Germans for peace after they have occupied the entire territory of France. In that case, it will be of no use at all. At that time, the Germans will not need us to ask for peace at all. They can do it themselves. Do whatever you want, said President Poincaré. Yes, by that time, we may not be calling for peace, but surrendering. There is a huge difference between the two. Prime Minister René Viviani also said. If you want to sum up, of course the posture is relatively low, but at least you can bargain. If it is surrender, it will become meat on the chopping board and be slaughtered by others. In this case, then get ready and contact the Germans as soon as possible. President Poincaré said. After making such a decision, President Poincaré seemed helpless. In the Franco-Prussian War more than 40 years ago, the French Second Empire was defeated, and the Emperor was captured, which directly led to the collapse of the empire. This time, the French Third Republic was also defeated. I'm afraid that the Third Republic will soon cease to exist. Yes, Your Excellency. However, if we want to surrender to the Germans, they will definitely offer a lot of harsh conditions. At that time, how should we reply to them? Minister Théophile Delcasse asked. After all, in this war, France is the losing side. If you want to end the war and gain peace, you have to pay a price. Judging from Germany's appetite, very harsh conditions will inevitably be offered. Your Excellency, the Germans have a very big appetite. If Russia wanted to withdraw from the war, they extorted a large sum of war reparations and ceded a large amount of territory. If we want to make peace, the Germans will definitely kill us. We cut it straight, said Finance Minister Alexander Ribbert. This is inevitable. Who made us unable to defeat the Germans, and now we have to ask them for peace. The only thing we can do is probably to pay as little price as possible and reduce losses. Northeast Viviani said. Being slaughtered by the Germans is not very good for everyone. However, there is no way to do this. After the army is defeated, if you want not to perish, you can only pay the price in other ways. What kind of conditions will the Germans probably propose? President Poincaré asked. Your Excellency, after the defeat of this war, we may not be able to keep our overseas colonies. The Germans have always coveted our overseas colonies. The root cause of this war is actually that the Germans are dissatisfied with our occupation of a large number of overseas colonies. Therefore, if we ask the Germans for peace, they will definitely ask us to transfer overseas colonies to them. Théophile Delcasse said. President Poincaré and René Viviani Prime Minister's brows were only frowned. France's overseas colonies are second only to Britain. Although not as rich as Britain's overseas colonies, it can also bring a lot of benefits to France every year. If those overseas colonies are lost, it will be a heavy blow to France. Of course, if the Germans force France to hand over all its overseas colonies to Germany, they have nothing to do. The situation is stronger than the people, and in order to save some losses for the homeland, they can only agree to the demands of the Germans. It's a pity to lose overseas colonies. However, the mainland of the French Republic is our foundation. The Germans want those colonies, so let them. As long as we can keep the mainland of the Republic, our loss will not be too big, said Prime Minister René Viviani. President Poincaré nodded. Indeed, the importance of the French mainland is far above the overseas colonies. Although the area of overseas colonies is 20 times that of mainland France, the population is much larger than that of mainland France. But, given their choice, they would still rather have their homeland than overseas colonies. Your Excellency, Prime Minister. In addition to overseas colonies, I'm afraid that some land in the mainland must be ceded to the Germans. However, I don't know how big the appetite of the Germans is. Théophile Delcasse continued. The territory of France is not comparable to that of Russia. They ceded a large area of territory to the Germans, but their territory is also very large. If the Germans encroach on our territory, there will be nothing left for France. Poincaré said. The president. Your Excellency, no one is willing to cede territory to the Germans. But if the Germans force us to cede the territory, we probably have nothing to do. Théophile Delcasse said. Try to fight for it. We can make some concessions in other areas, but our territory must be preserved as much as possible. President Poincaré said. Yes, Your Excellency the President. Théophile Delcasse nodded. However, he thought it would be very difficult to do this. How can the appetite of the Germans be so easily satisfied? Another point is the war indemnity. The Germans extorted 20 billion marks from the Russians. If we ask for peace, they will definitely extort a large amount of war indemnity from us. Théophile Delcasse continued. If the Germans only ask for war reparations of 20 marks, that's nothing. Our overseas investment is enough to pay. Finance Minister Alexander Ribbert said. France is also known as the usury empire. They have a lot of investment all over the world. This makes them very rich. It is precisely because of this that the industrial development of France has fallen into a bottleneck. After all, everyone has gone to usury, and there are still people who are honestly developing industries. During this period, France invested more than 50 billion francs overseas. Converted into marks, it is equivalent to 40 billion marks. Therefore, if Germany only asks France for war reparations of 20 billion marks, this is nothing more than a trivial matter to them. The appetite of the Germans may be even greater. After all, we are much richer than the Russians. Prime Minister René Viviani said. No matter what, during the negotiation, we also want to reduce war reparations as much as possible. President Poincaré said. After deliberation, the French government appointed Foreign Minister Théophile Viviani as the plenipotentiary special envoy to conduct peace negotiations with Germany on behalf of France. Chapter 645. Sorry Italian. Rome, the capital of Italy, has become a place that Catholics all over the world yearn for because the Holy See is in the Vatican. However, the relationship between the Italian government and the Vatican is very bad. Before the unification of Italy, the Holy See ruled the Papal States in central Italy. The Second French Empire provided security guarantees for the Papal States. But it is a pity that the Second French Empire was wiped out in the Franco-Prussian War. This also allowed the Kingdom of Sardinia to directly capture the entire Papal State. The Holy See was driven to the tiny Vatican. A large amount of wealth originally belonging to the Holy See also fell into the hands of the Kingdom of Sardinia. Until now, the Italian royal family is still unpopular in the Vatican. King Vittorio Emanuele III of the Kingdom of Italy is now in his palace, praying to God, praying that the combined fleet can defeat the German navy in a naval battle. That way, they might be able to get a decent peace. If you can go to the Vatican to pray, maybe the effect will be better. But Vittorio Emanuele III knew he couldn't go to the Vatican at all. In this world war, the performance of the Italian army was really terrible. In the Alps, they were beaten by the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the German army, and suffered heavy losses. Had to give up the attack on the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and blindly defended. It can be said that their contribution in this war was nothing more than holding back part of the Austro-Hungarian army. However, the situation on the battlefield changed suddenly. The Allied powers, which seemed to lose the war, won one victory after another, as if they had been beaten to death. Powerful countries one after another were defeated by Germany. Soon, it will be the turn of the Kingdom of Italy. In terms of military strength, the Kingdom of Italy has no chance of winning at all. But at the same time, they are unwilling to fail. Therefore, when the British proposed to form a joint fleet to defeat the German navy and fight for a chance of survival, the Kingdom of Italy immediately agreed. For this battle, the Italian government undoubtedly has great hopes. If you can win, then all crises will be resolved. No matter how bad it is, a decent peace can be fought for. If it fails, it's all over. King Vittorio Emanuele III's most aggrieved point is undoubtedly betraying the Allies and joining the Allies. Originally, they were members of the Allied powers. Although there are conflicts with the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they are all conflicts of interests and are not irreconcilable. If they can continue to stay in the alliance, then they are now part of the victors. There's no need to be frightened like a member now. What's more, you can also share a lot of fruits of victory. Now it's alright, not only can't get any fruits of victory, but also have to pay for their own interests. This kind of comparison is really too big. Often Vittorio Emanuele III regret, damn, Giovanni Giolitti. It is because of him that the kingdom betrayed the Allies. Otherwise, we would be cheering for victory. King Vittorio Emanuele III Bidtooth said. Giovanni Giolitti was the last prime minister. It was when he was prime minister that Italy betrayed the Allies and joined the Allies. However, Vittorio Emanuele III seems to have forgotten that when the British and French threw so many baits, he was also LURED*. What's more, he, the king, should bear the main responsibility. It's just that it is the monarch's usual practice to shift the responsibility to the courtiers. Your Majesty, the Prime Minister is here. The waiter reported to King Vittorio Emanuele III. Well, let him come in. Vittorio Emanuele III said. Antonio Sirandra Prime Minister walked into the office. Prime Minister, is there any news about the naval battle? King Vittorio Emanuele III asked eagerly. Your Majesty, there is no news yet. His Excellent Francisco is guarding the Ministry of the Navy. As soon as there is news, he will report it immediately. Prime Minister Antonio Sirandra said. Vittorio Emanuele III breathed a sigh of relief. No news. Perhaps the best news. Because at least the bad news of the defeat has not been received. Can we defeat the Germans in this battle? King Vittorio Emanuele III had a trace of earnestness in his eyes. Your Majesty, it is very difficult to say. In addition, I'm not from the Navy, and I know little about naval warfare. However, judging from the comparison of the strengths of the two sides, there is not a big gap between us and the German Navy. If we are lucky, we can defeat Germany. People, it is not impossible. Prime Minister Antonio Sarandra said. Vittorio Emanuele III nodded. I hope God can bless the Kingdom of Italy. Hey, if we had known earlier, we shouldn't have betrayed the Allies for a little benefit. Now, it's time for us to pay the price for it. King Vittorio Emanuele III said with an expression on his face frustrated. When he thought of this, he regretted it very much. However, there is no regret medicine in this world. Even if you regret it, it's useless. Your Majesty, don't say that. After all, you made that decision for the benefit of the Kingdom of Italy. At that time, thought that the Germans would fail. After all, Britain, France, and Russia are too powerful. But who knew they would actually? How could the war be won so easily? This is really unbelievable, said Antonio Salandra. If they were given a chance to choose again, they would probably choose to stay in the allied country without hesitation. In this way, they can hitch a ride with the Germans and follow the Germans to pick up cheap. After Germany won the war, of course it will take the lead when distributing the benefits of the war. But even if they can drink some soup, that would be good. At least you don't have to worry like now. If you fail, even the country will perish. Yes, I did that for the benefit of the Kingdom of Italy. King Vittorio Emanuele III was very satisfied with this rhetoric. Of course, he made a mistake on this issue, but isn't it worth understanding to make a mistake for the sake of the national interest? Thinking of these, Vittorio Emanuele III felt much better. Chapter 646. Beg for mercy. The Minister of the Italian Navy, Francisco, is a balding middle-aged man. He is not from the Navy. The reason why he can sit in this position is entirely because he has a good personal relationship with King Vittorio Emanuele III. With a layman leading the Navy, it's no wonder the Italian Navy is terrible. Francisco stayed in the telegraph room of the Ministry of the Navy, waiting for the result of the naval battle. He knew that both the king and the prime minister were waiting for the outcome of the naval battle. For the Kingdom of Italy, this naval battle is really crucial, and it is directly related to the fate of the kingdom. Why is there no news yet? Did we lose the battle? Then what should we do? Francisco was worried. Regarding this naval battle, Francisco is actually very pessimistic. Although he is not from the Navy, he is also very clear about the strength of the German Navy. It is precisely because of this that he does not have much hope for the United Fleet. Although the combined fleet is not weak, the German Navy is even stronger. It is almost impossible for the combined fleet to defeat the German Navy. Now, many senior officials of the Kingdom of Italy are also very dissatisfied with betraying the Allies and joining the Allies. Think it's totally suicide. If the Kingdom of Italy remained in the Allies, they would be able to win the war and share the dividends of the war. It will not be like it is now, and it is about to perish. Your Excellency, a telegram from General Paul. The secretary reported to Francisco. Francisco almost snatched the telegram from the secretary's hand and then read it immediately. However, when he finished reading the telegram, his face was already pale. Damn it, I actually lost. How did this happen? Francisco murmured. The United Fleet lost the decisive battle without accident and caused very slight losses to the German Navy. It can be said that the German Navy once again won a complete victory in this decisive battle at sea. However, this is undoubtedly a disaster for the members of the Allied powers. Francisco immediately rushed to the palace to report the results of the naval battle to King Vittorio Emanuele III and Prime Minister Antonio Salandra. Now that the naval battle has failed, they have to prepare early. Otherwise, once the German army launches a massive attack on the Kingdom of Italy, how can they resist it? When Francisco rushed to the palace and reported the news of the crushing defeat of the Navy to King Vittorio Emanuele III and Prime Minister Antonio Sarandra, both of them were stunned. It really failed. It really failed. I knew a long time ago that if we can't beat the Germans, we will definitely fail. King Vittorio Emanuele III looked remorseful. Prime Minister Antonio Sarandra also looked very ugly. Since the Navy failed in this battle, their current fate of the Kingdom of Italy is almost certain. Your Majesty, now is not the time to regret. Since the Navy has already lost, then we have no chance. Now we must find a way to preserve the Kingdom of Italy as much as possible. Prime Minister Antonio Sarandra said. Yes, we want to preserve the Kingdom of Italy. Vittorio Emanuele III nodded repeatedly. Although the battle was lost, the Kingdom of Italy must be kept. It has only been more than 40 years since the unification of the Kingdom of Italy was completed. They said nothing to let the Kingdom of Italy go to perish and split again. Bring in the foreign minister. If you want to negotiate peace with the Germans, the foreign minister is the best candidate. Prime Minister Antonio Sarandra said. Regarding this, Vittorio Emanuele III certainly has no objection. Soon, Foreign Minister Paul Basselli came to the palace. When he learned that the United Fleet was completely defeated, his face was also very ugly. Your Majesty, since the situation of the war is already like this, the war cannot continue no matter what. If we want to keep the Kingdom of Italy, we must hold peace talks with the Germans to end this war. Paul Basselli said. Yes, I think so too. Therefore, I decided to appoint you to be fully responsible for peace talks with the Germans. King Vittorio Emanuele III said. Paul Basselli nodded. Your Majesty, it is my duty to contribute my strength to the kingdom. However, this time we are considered defeated. If we want to seek peace from the Germans, I'm afraid we will have to pay a very high price. Otherwise, the Germans will never let us go. King Vittorio Emanuele III's face flashed a trace of pain. He also knew that this time he might bleed heavily, although he was a little reluctant. But he knew that if the appetite of the Germans could not be satisfied, maybe the Kingdom of Italy would really be wiped out by the Germans. Without enough strength to preserve the Kingdom of Italy, they could only beg for mercy from the Germans, who let the simple ghosts be obsessed with betraying the Allies and joining the Allies. This is simply asking for death. Talk to the Germans as much as possible and let the kingdom pay as little as possible. In this war, the kingdom has already paid a heavy price. If it is blackmailed by the Germans again, the kingdom may not be able to persist. Yes, Prime Minister Antonio Sarandra said. The Kingdom of Italy suffered a lot in this war. The army was hit hard by the German-Austrian coalition forces in the north, and even lost a lot of territory. The Navy's main fleet is now completely wiped out. Such a loss is completely unimaginable for the Kingdom of Italy, which originally wanted to take advantage of the war. Yes, Your Majesty, Your Excellency Prime Minister, I will try my best. However, I think we still have to be prepared to be blackmailed by the Germans. The Germans have too great an advantage in this war. If they are willing, they can even destroy us directly. Therefore, it will be almost impossible to expect them to show kindness and let us go. Paul Basselli reminded. Vittorio Emanuele III and Antonio Sarandra both nodded. They also know how unfavorable the current situation is for the Kingdom of Italy. It is God's blessing to be able to ask the Germans to raise their hands and let them go. As for the rest, I'm afraid that the only thing to do is to satisfy the Germans as much as possible. Chapter 647. Ready to rip off. Your Majesty, the Imperial Ambassadors to Switzerland have reported that the French and Italian ambassadors to Switzerland have successively proposed peace talks with the Empire. It seems that the effect of the victory of the naval battle has begun to show. Imperial Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wacht reported. It's no wonder. Originally, they pinned their hopes on the naval battle. Now, they have lost a complete defeat in the naval battle. Under such circumstances, of course they can't hold on. Qin Tian nodded with a smile. It can be said that Germany is only one step away from winning the final victory in this battle. Although, the British are still stubbornly resisting. But France is different from Italy. They don't have straits to protect them. The powerful German army can destroy them at any time. In order to keep their country, they can only beg for mercy from Germany. And Germany can finally reap the benefits it gained in this war. Your Majesty, if the Empire is not prepared to destroy France and Italy, I think it is time to have peace talks with them. Prime Minister Bernhard von Gillow said. Well, then prepare to have peace talks with them. Let the representatives of the French and Italians come to Berlin. Since they are begging for mercy, they must appear to be begging for mercy. Qin Tian said. Yes, Your Majesty. Both Prime Minister Billow and Foreign Minister Wahid repeatedly repeated. During the peace talks against France and Italy, I hope to get as much benefit from them as possible. You know, in order to win this war, the Empire paid a huge price. The consumption alone, the military expenditures have exhausted all the accumulation we have accumulated over the years. Even the government is already heavily in debt. Now that we have won the war, everything will naturally need to be paid by them, Qin Tian said. In order to win this war, Germany began preparations a long time ago. To this end, the army has undergone a large-scale facelift, equipped with a large number of advanced weapons, especially automatic weapons and artillery. Make the army's various units have more powerful firepower. Not to mention the navy, a large number of new battleships and battle cruisers, as well as aircraft carriers, are all piled up with money. In the war, the strong combat effectiveness of the German army was mainly manifested in its powerful firepower. This certainly enabled the German army to win the battle at a relatively small cost. But at the same time, the consumption of logistics materials is also very alarming. At the end of the day, these all cost money. In war, a lot of resources are tilted towards war. This not only affects the lives of the people, but also restricts the supply of many materials that are in short supply, such as gasoline and so on. At the same time, the country's economy has also been adversely affected. If the war continues to drag on, it will have a very negative impact on the German economy. Fortunately, the war is not over yet. However, Germany's victory in the war was beyond any doubt. Moreover, it is also possible to heal the wounds of the war by blackmailing the defeated country, restore the country's economy, and ensure that the war can continue. The last time Russia paid Germany as much as 20 billion marks in war reparations in order to withdraw from the war, all paid in gold and other precious metals. This made Germany a windfall, and the financial pressure was effectively relieved. This time, the French and Italians couldn't hold it anymore and offered to send it to their door. This is undoubtedly another good opportunity for Germany. Yes, Your Majesty. However, what is our bottom line in the peace talks with the French and Italians? Wachter asked. Qin Tian thought for a while and then said, when negotiating with the French, our bottom line mainly has the following points. First, the war indemnity must not be less than 50 billion marks. Second, all French overseas colonies must be transferred to the empire. Thirdly, France should cede a large area of territory to the empire. For example, with the Loire River as the boundary, the north belongs to the empire, and the south belongs to France. Fourth, France's military strength must be limited, and it is not allowed to have air force. Navy. The displacement of warships must not exceed 5,000 tons. Submarines and aircraft carriers cannot be owned. The size of the army must be limited to less than 100,000 people. The number of police officers must not exceed the total strength of the army, etc. You can figure out the rest. When Qin Tian said all these conditions, Bluo and Wachter were already stunned. They never thought that Qin Tian would impose such harsh conditions on France. You know, this is much harsher than what they imagined. Your Majesty, will the French agree to such a condition? If they agree, it will be no different from subjugation. Prime Minister Bismarck said. As many as 50 billion marks in war reparations, which is already 20 times Germany's annual fiscal revenue. You know, Germany's fiscal revenue last year was only 2.4 billion marks. Let's not talk about whether the French are willing to pay so much war indemnity. Even if they are willing, do they have so much money? In this regard, both Prime Minister Bismarck and Wachter have serious doubts. Don't worry, the French will agree. If they refuse, then our army will occupy the entire territory of France. At that time, they will also have to be slaughtered by us. Although 50 billion marks is an astronomical figure, for France it's not a big deal for people. You know, the French's investment in various parts of the world is probably as high as hundreds of billions of francs, which is 80 billion marks when converted into marks. Otherwise, why would they be called what about a usury empire? Qin Tian said. As for colonies and territories, the French will definitely not agree easily. But, don't forget, the empire now has an absolute advantage. They are just meat on the chopping board and let the empire slaughter them. If they refuse, then the empire will destroy them. Therefore, they have no choice. The overseas colonies of the French are the source of raw materials and markets that the empire urgently needs. Northern France is where the French industry is most developed. If the empire can absorb and digest this piece of territory, then the industrial strength of the empire will be further enhanced. As for restricting the military strength of the French, it is for the safety of the empire. The empire will inevitably make them feel resentful if they do not limit their military strength. How could the empire be relieved? Qin Tian continued. Below and Vacht both nodded. They saw that what Qin Tian said made sense, so they planned to try it. Anyway, as Qin Tian said, the empire has an absolute advantage in this negotiation, and they have no choice but to agree to the conditions of the empire. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 648, Calculate Allies. As for the peace talks with the Italians, let's wait until the representatives of the Austro-Hungarian Empire arrive. It can be done at the end. Talk to the French first, and then the Italians. Qin Tian said. Austro-Hungary is an ally of Germany, although they did not contribute much in this war. But without the Austro-Hungarian Empire holding back a large number of Russian troops in the early stages of the war, it would not have been so easy for Germany to win the war. At least, you will pay a higher price. What's more, in the battle against Italy, the Austro-Hungarian Empire is the main force. Although the fighting power of the Austro-Hungarian army is relatively poor, the fighting power of the Italians is even worse. With Russia already withdrawing from the war, if the Austro-Hungarian Empire attacked Italy with all its strength, the Italians would simply not be able to resist it. Had it not been for the Austro-Hungarian Empire's attempt to preserve its strength, they might have defeated Italy long ago. Of course, Qin Tian has always kept in mind that the relationship between Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire will gradually change with the development of the situation. When the war broke out, the two countries were close allies. However, as the war is gradually won, the interests of both sides will also conflict. Especially after the victory of the war, the two countries will inevitably have more conflicts due to the uneven distribution of spoils. Under such circumstances, the relationship between the two countries will inevitably get worse and worse, and even turn to confrontation. The continent of Europe is too small. It is enough to have a powerful country like Germany, and there is no room for another powerful country. Even in order to ensure the status and safety of Germany, Qin Tian will suppress the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the future. What's more, the Crown Prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire has always been hostile to Germany. This made Qin Tian even more vigilant. If necessary, Qin Tian even planned to destroy the Austro-Hungarian Empire in one fell swoop. In this way, Germany can truly dominate the European continent. Otherwise, when fighting against other powerful countries in the future, Qin Tian would have to worry about whether the Austro-Hungarian Empire would rebel. However, the two sides have not yet torn faces. Therefore, in the peace talks with Italy, the Austro-Hungarian Empire must be brought in. Various measures against the Austro-Hungarian Empire must wait until after the war is won, or after Germany has digested the results obtained in the war. Your Majesty, the Austro-Hungarian Empire is now an ally of the Empire. It is reasonable to call them in the peace talks with the Kingdom of Italy. However, the Austro-Hungarian Empire has always had ambitions for Italy. Especially before the unification of Italy, Italy has a lot of territory. If they take this opportunity to take back those territories, should we support them? Wachter said. No. Italy cannot be overly weakened, or in other words, the Austro-Hungarian Empire cannot gain too much benefit from Italy, otherwise, this will pose a great threat to the empire. Qin Tian said, yes, your majesty is right. The Austro-Hungarian Empire is certainly an ally of the empire, but that is because the empire is facing many enemy countries. Now, the empire is about to win the war. The international environment in which the empire is located, there have also been fundamental changes between the empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I'm afraid that they will gradually change from allies to enemies. Therefore, the empire has to prepare earlier. Prime Minister Bismarck said. Well, so this time, if the Austro-Hungarian Empire proposes conditions that are detrimental to the empire during the peace talks, or conditions that are too outrageous, the empire will not be able to support them. Qin Tian said. Yes, your majesty. Vashite nodded. He already understood what Qin Tian and Bismarck meant. Although, it seems a bit inappropriate to start counting one's allies before the war is over. However, this is the way it is between countries. No permanent friends, only permanent interests. During the peace talks with Italy. We also want Italy to provide huge war reparations to the empire. No less than 20 billion marks. Although Italy is not as rich as France, it is better than the Russians' 20 billion marks. Although there are a lot of them, if they tighten their belts, they should be able to pay back. In addition, Italy's overseas colonies will be transferred to the empire. At the same time, they have to seize the empire's oil fields in Libya after the war broke out, so compensation for the losses caused to the empire. Qin Tian said. Yes, Your Majesty. Wahid replied. Of course, these conditions proposed by Qin Tian are very harsh. However, the current situation of the Italians is very similar to that of France. If they dare to disagree, then the imperial army can unite with the Austro-Hungarian Empire to destroy them at any time. Therefore, in the face of these harsh conditions proposed by the empire, they had no choice but to agree. By the way, the navy hopes to get a base in the Mediterranean. In this case, let the Italians cede Sicily to us. If possible, add Sardinia and French Corsica. In this case, the empire has a foothold in the Mediterranean Sea. Qin Tian continued. Although Qin Tian has no ambitions for the mainland of the Kingdom of Italy, but those islands were different. The importance of the Mediterranean is self-evident, guarding this important channel connecting the East and the West. Once Germany has fully received the overseas colonies of the British, no matter whether it is various materials obtained from India or those mined from the Middle East, they all need to be transported back to Germany through the Mediterranean Sea. In this case, the safety of routes on the Mediterranean is very important, which is directly related to Germany's energy security. In addition, having a foothold in the Mediterranean Sea can also ensure that the empire is squeezed by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Austro-Hungarian Empire had a geographical advantage in the Mediterranean. If Germany can own these islands, it can offset the geographical advantages of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This is undoubtedly very important for Germany. Your Majesty, the Italians probably won't cede Sardinia to us. After all, that's where the Kingdom of Sardinia rose. Below said. Sardinia can be abandoned, but Sicily and Corsica must be ceded to us. This is the bottom line of the empire. If the Italians don't agree, then we will send troops to occupy those islands. The Imperial Marines have been in the army for so many years. Well, I haven't really been on the battlefield yet. Anyway, the battle against the British mainland won't start for a while, so it's just a matter of time for the Marines to go around the Mediterranean Sea, which can be regarded as an actual combat exercise. Qin Tian said. Yes, Your Majesty. Billow and Wahid both replied. Chapter 649. Concerns of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Vienna, the capital of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Schönbrunn Palace. Emperor Franz Joseph I of Austria, lying on the bed, listened to the minister's report on state affairs. The current Franz Joseph I is 85 years old. Among the monarchs of European countries, he is undoubtedly the longest lived one. Of course, being too old and not in good health made him no longer have the energy to deal with state affairs. Most of the state affairs are handed over to Crown Prince Carol. This is also an exercise for Crown Prince Carol, so that he can better inherit the throne after 100 years. Crown Prince Carol is also very young, only 28 years old. It is undoubtedly difficult to control a big country like the Austro-Hungarian Empire at such an age. Of course, Kaiser Wilhelm III is only 27 years old now. This is even more incomparable. However, compared with William III, although everyone is of the same age, but Crown Prince Carol's personal ability is much worse. At the same time, Crown Prince Carol was headstrong and conceited, and was hostile to William III and the German Empire. This was also what worried Franz Joseph I. If he was a few years younger, he might have reselected a more suitable crown prince. It's just that he doesn't have so much time now, so he can only hope that God can bless the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Your Majesty, the German Navy once again won a decisive battle. The combined fleet of Britain, France, and Italy was defeated by the German Navy at a small cost. The German Navy has consolidated its position as the supremacy of the sea. Even if other countries add up, and not as powerful as the German Navy, the world's oceans will soon be under German rule. Admiral Anton Haus, commander of the Austro-Hungarian Navy, said, "Send a telegram to His Majesty William III to congratulate the German Navy on winning the naval battle. I know that the Austro-Hungarian navy may not be able to confront the German navy anyway. Franz Joseph I sighed. Yes, your majesty. Compared with the German navy, we are really far behind. Admiral Anton House said. Although, the Austro-Hungarian navy was also developing. However, all over the world, they are not ranked first. Not to mention, that it has been compared with the world's #1 German navy. If the German navy dispatched a squadron at will, it would easily crush the Austro-Hungarian navy. Your Majesty, I think the German navy is too powerful. This is not good news for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I'm sure that the Germans' ambitions will also expand with their strength. The German navy will definitely send fleet stationed in the Mediterranean. This will pose a serious threat to the Austro-Hungarian Empire and will also change the power structure of the Mediterranean. From now on, the Austro-Hungarian Empire also needs to vigorously develop its navy. Otherwise, our interests will be seriously damaged, Crown Prince Carol said. He was very jealous of the German Navy's success in decisive battles and trampled the British Royal Navy, which was once the world's #1, to the ground. How he hopes that one day, the Austro-Hungarian Navy will also become stronger. In this case, the Austro-Hungarian Empire would have the capital to confront Germany. Franz Joseph I remained silent for a long time, and after a while, he said, the navy is indeed very important, and this is also the shortcoming of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. We are indeed the United Kingdom that has shifted its resources to the navy. Your Majesty is wise. Crown Prince Carol and Admiral Anton House said immediately. Your Majesty, after the German navy won this naval battle, it is foreseeable that the French and Italians will definitely not be able to hold on. They are expected to surrender soon. The interests of the empire in this war need to be guaranteed, said Austro-Hungarian Prime Minister Mario Weber. All the senior officials of the Austro-Hungarian Empire gathered here were a little excited. The war is coming to an end, and it seems time to distribute the spoils. As a member of the Allied powers, Austria-Hungary was also the victor of the war. So, how much benefit should they gain from this feast? Definitely the more the merrier. It has already made the ministers crazy. What I'm worried about now is whether the Germans will deliberately target the empire and take the interests that originally belonged to the Austro-Hungarian Empire for themselves. Just like what they did in Russia. Crown Prince Carol said suddenly. Suddenly, the ministers were stunned. Germany almost monopolized Russia's interests and only gave a little soup to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Although, Germany expressed its support for the expansion of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the Balkans. However, they still felt a little uncomfortable. No matter what, the empire is also the winner of this war. It is also an ally with the Germans. They should not do too much. Franz Joseph I said. In the negotiations with France, we can try our best to gain interests. If the Germans stop us, we will give up. Anyway, we did not participate in the war against France. However, the negotiations with Italy are directly related to the vital interests of the empire. Therefore, in the negotiations with Italy, the interests of the Austro-Hungarian Empire must be guaranteed, Mario Weber said. Although we did not send troops to attack France, it was precisely because of our attack on Italy that we restrained a large number of French troops. Reasonably, the Germans cannot be greedy for our interests. Crown Prince Carol said angrily. France is rich, and Crown Prince Carol knows it. He can be sure that the Germans will severely blackmail the French. He felt very uncomfortable when he thought that the Germans could extort a large amount of wealth from France. The flame of jealousy was about to ignite his whole body. We can't offend Germany yet. Therefore, it is best not to have any grudges with them. Appropriate concessions are helpful to the empire. Franz Joseph I said. Yes, Your Majesty. Although a little unwilling, Crown Prince Carol nodded. However, it's hard to say what he will think in his heart. Your Majesty, I have just been notified by Germany that the Italians have formally requested peace talks with Germany. The German government asked us to send a delegation to participate. Baron Leopold von Berchtold, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Austro-Hungarian Empire reported. Where is the venue for the negotiations? Crown Prince Carol asked. In Berlin. Baron Berchtold replied. Damn. The Germans just don't take us seriously. They didn't discuss with us at all, and they directly set the venue for the negotiation. Crown Prince Carol said angrily. Chapter 650, Brothers and Sisters. The Austro-Hungarian Empire is the main force in the war against Italy, but the Italians bypassed us and went directly to the Germans for peace. This is clearly contempt for the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which we cannot accept. Crown Prince Carol continued said. The ministers all looked at Crown Prince Carol, more or less angry in their hearts. It's just that it's not as intense as Crown Prince Carol's performance. Crown Prince, what are you going to do? Don't you go to Berlin to participate in the peace talks? Or directly accuse Germany and tear yourself apart? Franz Joseph I asked. Suddenly, Crown Prince Carol was speechless. He only dared to say that. He really didn't have the courage to question Germany and tear himself apart with Germany. He deeply knows how powerful Germany's military strength is. Although the Austro-Hungarian Empire is also one of the major powers in the world, its military strength is far behind that of Germany. If there is a fight, the Austro-Hungarian Empire is absolutely impossible to be Germany's opponent. When Franz Joseph I saw the speechless Crown Prince Carol, he couldn't help but sighed. Now he feels more and more that the heir to the throne is a bit inappropriate. The communication between countries depends on the strength of the country after all. Although we are allies with Germany. But, don't you see, that the strength of the Germans has far surpassed ours? This is why Italy the reason why people will bypass us and directly hold peace talks with Germany. If the Germans want to, they can even ignore us. Therefore, if we are not as strong as humans, if we blindly force it, not only will it not bring us benefits, on the contrary, it will put the empire in trouble. Franz Joseph I said. Yes, Your Majesty. Everyone replied. They all knew what Franz Joseph I meant. That is, the strength of the Austro-Hungarian Empire is not as good as that of Germany, so don't be too demanding of benefits. Crown Prince Carol was very unwilling. But in front of Franz Joseph I, he didn't dare to refute at all. Although, Franz Joseph I was dying. But his influence in the entire empire is far from what Crown Prince Carol can compare. If Franz Joseph I wanted to, he could depose him as Crown Prince with one sentence. Crown Prince, you and Baron Berchtold, go to Berlin to participate in the negotiations. I don't expect you to win much benefits for the empire. I only hope that you can form a good relationship with His Majesty William III. The Hungarian Empire is the most beneficial. You are about the same age as His Majesty William III, but His Majesty William III's performance is far better than yours. Therefore, I hope you can learn from His Majesty William III. Franz I. Joseph I went on to say. It's just that Franz Joseph I didn't seem to expect that Crown Prince Carol's character was rather paranoid. The more he said that, the more conflicted Crown Prince Carol felt. He is 1 year older than Qin Tian, so how can he do it if he is asked to learn from Qin Tian? After leaving Schönbrunn Palace, Crown Prince Carol directly stopped Baron Berchtold, who was about to leave. Your Excellency the Baron, have the French also sent representatives to Berlin? Crown Prince Carol asked. Yes, Your Highness. According to the information we have received, the French foreign minister led a delegation to Berlin. It should also be for peace negotiations. Their navy has failed, and the French also see no hope of victory. Therefore, choose peace talks, Baron Berchtold said. Damn, the Germans didn't notify us to participate in the negotiations with the French. They clearly want to eat alone. Crown Prince Carol's expression became hideous. Baron Berchtold said nothing. However, the performance of Crown Prince Carol made him a little worried. This time the Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph I sent them to Berlin to participate in the negotiations. If the relationship between them and Germany was affected because of Crown Prince Carol, it would not be very good. However, Crown Prince Carol has always been paranoid, and he has nothing to do about it. Crown Prince Carol, with anger, boarded the train to Berlin with the delegation of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. At this time, the French delegation and the Italian delegation have already arrived in Berlin. German Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wachter came forward to entertain the two delegations. Although, the two sides are still enemies now, our soldiers are still fighting to the death on the battlefield. However, this did not prevent the upper echelons of the two sides from starting to contact. Especially when everyone has the will to end the war. German Emperor Qin Tian and Prime Minister Bismarck and other important officials did not show up. This time, the negotiations with France and Italy have been handed over to Vach to be responsible. With Qin Tian already drawing the bottom line, he should know how to negotiate and how to win more benefits for Germany. The atmosphere of the banquet was not bad. Everyone exchanged cups and cups, with smiles on their faces. It seems that they have forgotten that both sides are enemies. However, the smiles of the French and Italians are somewhat far-fetched. After all, they rushed to Berlin this time to seek peace. Soon, the Germans will kill them hard. For peace, they will pay an unimaginable price. Under such circumstances, naturally no one can laugh. The banquet did not last long before it ended. Due to the urgency of time, peace talks will be held the next day. Therefore, both parties need to take time to prepare. That night, French Foreign Minister Théophile Delcasse and Italian Foreign Minister Paul Basselli met in secret. For France and Italy, they are now like a pair of suffering brothers. Losing the war is already inevitable. Next, they will inevitably be slaughtered by the Germans. Although, no one wants to be butchered by the Germans. But in the case of not being able to beat Germany, they can only accept it passively. Otherwise, they will pay a higher price for it. After all, Germany now has enough strength to destroy their countries. France and Italy hope to form an offensive and defensive alliance during the negotiations. In this case, you may be able to pay less. Their country also suffered heavy losses in the war. If the Germans blackmail too hard, then I don't know how long it will take to recover. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.